Tom, are we on? Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming. This is our regular meeting, Town of Truckee Town Council, February 11th. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Commendatore.
Here.
Vice Mayor Klofstad.
Here.
Mayor Polity.
Here.
Councilmember Turin.
Here.
And I'll note Councilmember Abrams is absent this evening.
Thank you, Judy. And I'm going to ask, we have the 4th through 6th graders, or some 4th, 5th, and 6th, no 6th, 4th and 5th graders from Donner Trail Elementary. If everybody would rise and you can all lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, excuse me. Thank you. Ready, go. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. That was probably our clearest, most concise Pledge of Allegiance we've done up here in a while, so thank you. That was great. We've got item 5.1, presentations, moving into employee incentive award. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, public comment, sorry. I'd like to open up for public comment. Any item not on the agenda, please step over to the podium, and you have 3 minutes, and please state your name.
Hi there, my name is Michael Llewellyn. I'm an independent curator, and in partnership with the Nevada County Arts Council, the Truckee Donner Community Recreation Center, and UC Berkeley's Sage Hen Creek Field Station, we have developed an interpretive exhibit that will be on display at the Truckee Community Rec Center in February 2021, and it will address the vulnerability of the Sierra Nevada, its watersheds, and the scientific solution that was developed right here in Truckee to save both of those, and the fundamental cultural shift that's required to support those solutions and to implement them as well. Our exhibit is called Forest Fire, and our intention is to save our forests, our water, and our future. Our exhibit will engage the general public in the 13,000-year history of our forest, its relationship to fire, and the human role within that relationship. And today here I would like to request permission to make a more formal presentation of our exhibit to you during the next meeting.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
We'll get back to you on that one. You're welcome. Any other public comment on any item not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none?
Yes, I believe all the CEL students are here to make comment.
Oh, okay. Didn't know if you were waiting for an agenda item or not, so that's okay.
While the kids get ready and lined up, I'd like to introduce them. Hi, my name is Ashley Perkins. I'm the 4th and 5th grade teacher at Donner Trail Elementary, and we're here today to share with you our Don't Drop the Top campaign. We started this project at the beginning of the school year. I'm proud of these students every day, but I'm especially proud of them when they show so much passion and enthusiasm and dedication to a project such as this. So I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves and tell you all about our project.
Hello, my name is Lila Spear. I will explain what our project is. We are some volunteers from the Donner Trail 4th and 5th grade class, here to represent our service learning project, Don't Drop the Top. Don't Drop the Top is our project in which we collect caps and lids from the Truckee, Tahoe, and Soda Springs communities. With all the caps we collect, a company in Indiana is going to melt down the plastic and reshape it into benches. We would donate benches to schools in Sagehen. We are encouraging people to contribute their caps and lids through 70 publicly spread buckets.
Hi, my name is Adeline Pervance Rashashin. The reason we started this community project was our class wanted to reduce the amount of plastic that makes its ways into our oceans and landfills. When plastic flows into our oceans, it breaks down into microplastics that marine life can eat. The plastic then affects their health and humans that eat them. It's not just the oceans that are being affected, also our community's landfills. The trash that is buried under the surface is affecting our natural resources and ecosystems. We are trying to repurpose some of that plastic by collecting it and making it into benches. We decided to make benches because it will benefit our community as well as our environment.
We started in early October with 10 buckets that East Mountain Hardware graciously donated to our project. We then made flyers for the buckets, placed an ad on the radio, and sent persuasive letters to the businesses where we hope to place the buckets. The members of our class went to the different locations to advocate for our project and asked them to participate. Later, Kelly Moore Paints donated 15 more buckets to our cause, and we did the same thing, just placing them in different locations like Rite Aid, the rec center pool, the post office, and more. Last, we purchased 40 smaller buckets that targeted coffee shops and restaurants.
Hi, my name is Aurora. In our Don't Drop the Top process, each week we collect the contents of our 70 buckets around town with the help of our amazing teachers, Miss Perkins and Miss Keene, and our parents. Once we get the collected caps and lids into our classroom, this is what we do. First, we sort the caps and lids to make sure there is nothing in that group that we cannot accept. Next, we wash the caps and lids with soap, water, and sponges. Once they are all clean, in our spare time, we count them to see how close we are to our goal. After that, we weigh them in grams, then convert them into pounds. On average, each week, we get 20 pounds of caps and lids. Each pound makes a difference.
My name is Violet McKenzie. Currently, we have about 70 locations in town, not including all the TTUSD kitchens. We have also collected and weighed about 17,000 caps, saving 200 pounds of plastic from going to waste. It takes 400 pounds to make one bench, so we are halfway to making one bench. Our goal is to make 3 benches, so we will need 1,200 pounds of caps to make it. We will be working on this project until May and hope to collect the benches in June. We recently presented at the North Tahoe Chamber of Commerce and the TTUSD School Board.
Hi, my name is Ellen Ishimori, and in our next steps, we're trying to get more businesses to support our school and our project. We are proposing a recycling law change in the region to include 2, 4, and 5 plastics, caps, and lids. If 15 students can collect 200 pounds of caps in 3 months, how many pounds can the town of Truckee save from harming our environment? What can the town of Truckee do to keep this awareness going after we stop collecting in June? How can you help reduce plastic waste and save our environment through policy change?
Hi, I'm Larkin Haugen, and this is how you can help. We challenge you to fill a bucket, collect at home, share with family and friends, bring it to work, or choose a business not from our list. We are hoping that you know or are somebody who can take or deliver one of our 9 buckets. If you take one of our 9 buckets, fill out the sign-out sheet we brought with us today. We will follow up with you about our schedule to collect caps and lids. Help change the rules or guidelines to include more types of plastic recycling options. This is a sample collection bin. Under the flyer is a list of types of caps and lids we can accept. There is also a letter to the class. Thank you for having us today and helping the town of Truckee reduce plastic wastes.
Thanks again for having us. We will leave a stack of the buckets by the table. There is a sign-out sheet and some more information on a clipboard.
Thank you so much. That was great. So can I ask a quick question? So I'm assuming these plastic lids are not recyclable through our regular blue cart waste stream. Is that accurate? Is that why you guys took this on?
Yes, 4s and 5s. The company that is processing the benches for us does take 2 as well, so we are taking that, and the town does currently recycle 2s, but 4s and 5s are not included in the current bins.
Great. Does any other council members have any questions for these kids real quick?
No questions, but just want to say fantastic work. You are our future, and our future is now, so keep up the great work. Really appreciate it. And the Truckee Litter Corps is always looking for volunteers, so that'll, another opportunity.
And that would be the first Saturday of every month, right? Like, give them the full plug. Come on.
We took a little hiatus through the winter, but that'll be picking up again, I think, probably in April. So,
Well, we'll
yeah.
look for caps.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you guys want? You're good. Thank you so much. You guys are extremely well prepared, and your public speaking skills are phenomenal. So, thank you. With that, while we let them clear out, any other public comment on any items not on tonight's agenda? Those are parents moving. I'm seeing none.
Mayor, may I ask if the gentleman that spoke first could come see me and give me some contact information?
Yes.
Before he leaves?
Michael, that'd be you. Yep, thank you. Right back to Judy. Thank you. Great. I'm going to close public comment and move on to item 5.1, Employee Incentive Award announcements. Jeff.
That is a difficult act to follow, but I'll be brief. So we had an all-employee quarterly meeting, which we really cherish, and November 7th on Thursday. I was unable to be there as I was at a League of Cities conference for city managers, which was interesting. 2 days, Wednesday, Thursday. Talked about things like housing laws and housing funding and CalPERS and tax ballot measures, et cetera. But Kim was the MC in my stead, and there were a couple of awards, a few less than usual, but I think important ones, so let me just quickly go through them. 2 we're just going to kind of read off, not the details, because they've actually had 2 opportunities to be recognized previously. So these are very humble individuals and didn't want to be recognized a lot the third time, so I'll just read it off. The Police Officer of the Year is Jake Donahue. And Chief Leftwich presented that award, and if you have want any more information, the chief would be happy to supply that with you. And Valerie Pelk was the Police Employee of the Year, the non-sworn Officer of the Year, and both those awards were conveyed earlier at a police ceremony and then again at the All-Employer Quarterly. We had one additional employee, more traditional employee quarterly award to Caitlin Brennan for teamwork primarily, and I'll just read the paragraph. Caitlin has only worked for the town for 9 months, but in her short tenure, Caitlin has consistently exemplified the value of teamwork. Caitlin is there to help her coworkers in any way necessary. She approaches her responsibilities with a positive attitude. She recently stepped up to help out in the community development department Administrative technician Julie Paping had left to go back to the Bay Area, leaving a hole in the staffing that Caitlin has been filling. She did an excellent job for CDD and never complained and created some new systems and ideas. And now she's back with Judy's group in the clerk's office. And Julie's replacement has been hired and began work today, I believe. Yesterday. So those were the awards, and they're always excellent. I don't know if Caitlin's here. She is not.
Or Jake? No.
Nope. They
Valerie? Yeah.
No, they had
been awarded enough.
They had two
Thank you.
opportunities.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for all of their work, working on the town's behalf. Appreciate that. And item 5.2 is our quarterly financial status update. Nicole or Kim? Nicole? Yes.
Hang on one second. Honorable Mayor and council members, we wanted to give you a brief financial update for the quarter ending December 31st. So the first thing we're going to look at is our property tax trend. We don't have any changes in the information that you saw from our last update, but we wanted to give you some insight into our preliminary budget numbers so that when we do get to that budget process, these numbers aren't a surprise. So what we're hearing from the county is that we don't expect as strong of growth as we've seen in the past couple of years. So we're projecting only a 2.6% increase from fiscal year 1920 budget for the 2021 budget. And that's consistent with the messages we've been hearing for the past couple of years that growth is going to be slowing. We're not in a recession, but we're just not expecting as strong of growth as we've seen in the past couple of years. The estimates from the county were also a little bit high, which we talked about last financial update. With that, we're going to be pushing for conservative estimates for the 2021 budget, just so we come in either on budget or a little bit over rather than coming in short. Same messaging with our sales tax estimates for 2021. We're not expecting as strong of growth as we've seen in the past couple of years. Still some growth, a 2.6% increase over our 1920 budget numbers. And again, we're just prompting you so that when we show you guys the actual budget, these numbers aren't coming as a complete surprise. We do have some data from our quarter ending December 31 for transient occupancy tax. Year to date, we've collected $2.2 million. If we get the same amount for quarter 3 and 4 for 1920 as our 3-year average collections, we'll be down 5.2% for the year, but we will still meet our budget. So that's good. And we have been hearing from some hotels that they had good MLK weekends, but we've also been hearing from an equal amount that they had slower MLK weekends, so we're not really sure how we're going to come out for the third quarter. And in terms of year-on-year numbers, quarter 2, the quarter ending December 31, for transient occupancy tax, we are down 1.8% from fiscal year 18-19, the same quarter. This could have been due to different snow conditions or the fact that Christmas was midweek, but it wasn't a bad quarter. We did see some different makeup of our collections. Last year, we had really strong collections in single-family short-term rentals, and this year we've returned to our trend where hotels represent our biggest source of transient occupancy tax. Completely switching subjects, I attended a conference session held by the CEO of CalPERS, Marcy Frost, and she went over some projections for employer contributions, what they expect to see over the horizon, and they're expecting to see increases in our rates through 2023. As long as everything all their assumptions stay the same. So if they do decide to go with a discount rate change again in the future, that could impact this drastically. If all goes to plan, we should be seeing the positive effects of PEPRA pension reform starting as early as 2026. She did mention that about 40% of the membership in CalPERS is now people who were hired after the pension reform date, so they have a lower benefit formula, which is good for employers in stabilizing rates. So that's excellent. And we just wanted to check in briefly about where we're at with the budget process and encourage anyone who's interested in participating to attend the public events that we have. Our next event will be on March 30th from 5 to 9 p.m. and that will be an initial budget review with council. We will do a deep dive into the budget with internally with the town manager in the middle of April, and we'll come back with a new take on the budget on May 11th with council, which that's the second public meeting, and we're hoping that we can still meet our June 9th to propose the budget to council for adoption. And we just wanted to boast a little bit that our fiscal year 19-20 budget was awarded the Operating Budget Excellence Award by the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers. And so we're hoping to continue that trend into the future. With that, I open up for any questions.
Thank you, and congratulations. That's a great award. Good way to finish the presentation. Appreciate that. With that, we will open it up to any questions or comments from council, and then we'll open it up for public comment, starting to my right. Tony? No? All good. Open both presentations up for public comment. Anybody wishing to make a comment on either presentation? Seeing none. Thank you very much. And we will continue on. Closing public comment. Item 6, our consent calendar. We have a couple of changes here. So our consent calendar includes item 6.1, minutes of January 28th, 2020 regular and closed session meetings. Item 6.2, transit center relocation feasibility study. 6.3, approval of a full-time HR technician position. 6.4, treasurer's report for the quarter ended December 31st, 2019. 6.5, a lot of development code amendments. 6.6, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grant agreements for Coldstream and I-80 and Donner Pass Road. 6.7, purchase of one parking district truck. 6.8, the Truckee Donner PUD electric system master plan. 6.9, the request for bids process for the town-owned Rue Ivy parcel, changing that deadline. And 6.10, a purchasing authorization with CDW government. With that, I know on council, maybe just for clarification's sake, would anybody on council like to pull any of the consent calendar items?
I would like to pull 6.8.
6.8.
And I would like to pull 6.7.
Okay. Nothing over there. Staff like to pull anything?
6.6.
6.6. And any member of the public wish to pull anything? If you... You know the rules, Susie.
I've never actually seen anybody pull a consent calendar item from the public. But
Neither have I. Good.
6.2 I wanted to make a comment about, if we can pull that one, the transit center.
6.2.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So first of all, removing 6.2, 6.6, 6.7, and 6.8. Do I have a motion to proceed with the consent calendar on all items other than those?
I'll move the approval of the consent calendar with the exception of those items as noted.
I'll second it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Great. So everything passes, and what we're going to do, I'm going to come back to each one of these because we're trying to move ahead with item 7.1 tonight. If any of these are going to take longer than about 5 minutes in terms of discussion, I'm going to ask that we sort of just understand that, and we're going to move them to the end of our agenda tonight. If we can get them done in under 5 minutes, we're going to get them done now. Does that work for everybody up here? Yeah? Everybody's good over there? Great. So 6.2, Susie, you went way too far. 6.2, you wanted to make a comment.
Thank you. My name is Susie Turnay. I just wanted to say I was dismayed to find out when that next meeting is during a planning commission meeting. And so I just wanted to, it's because I won't be there to be able to make comment at that point, say, please keep in mind the further you move that transit center from our current train station, the less effective the transit becomes. Even if you have a shuttle between the two, an extra step in there decreases your usership. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on item 6.2? Any council comments on 6.2? Do I have a motion on 6.2?
I move to approve 6.2.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Councilmember Tierman. 6.2 passes. 6.6 was pulled by Dan, so go ahead with 6.6, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is a number of agreements related to the Coldstream project. One of the agreements that was in your staff report, there was a request to modify the language in one of those agreements. That proposed modification was submitted to council today. Both staff and the other parties to the agreement are in support of the modification. So if council is comfortable with the modified language we submitted earlier, we would request that your approval tonight include in the motion the fact that we're amending the language that was in the staff report to instead include the section that we provided earlier.
Just the one agreement.
Yeah, it's just the one agreement, which is the restated reimbursement agreement for the Donner Creek Bridge / arch culvert improvement and offsite improvements.
And that specifically that piece is all that we're rewording.
Yes.
That you emailed.
Yeah. So that one section, the old section 5.6.1 would be removed, and that new section would be inserted.
Great. I'm going to open 6.6 for public comment. Seeing none, closing public comment on 6.6. Any questions or deliberation from council? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll move that we approve the amended language provided by the town engineer to the agreement at Coldstream Canyon.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. 6.6 is approved. 6.7 was pulled by Councilmember Commendatore.
No.
I'm sorry.
That was me.
It was the other way around. I apologize.
All right.
My notes are backwards. Councilmember Vice Mayor Klofstad, 6.7.
I just have a couple questions for staff. So I understand that the staff report explained that this was an urgent purchase. I just want to understand if there's any other opportunities to delay this purchase and wait for a more appropriate zero emission or low emission vehicle.
Vice Mayor Klofstad, I'll address those issues. First clarification is, I would say it's an immediate need, but not an urgent need. Just to clarify that, I don't want to put an undue strain on having to have the vehicle. As always, we do assess the greenhouse gases with our fleet purchases in the police department. This particular truck is being purchased through the enterprise fund and the parking district and is for the police aid to do mostly parking enforcement. It is a marked vehicle and does require some lighting packages, which adds some complexity to the vehicle purchase itself. All electric vehicles, for example, can be complex to tap into for emergency lighting, and it's not always copacetic with the battery systems, which is always a consideration when we take a factory vehicle and start tinkering with the electrical system. That's also the power source of the vehicle. This particular vehicle needs to have truck capabilities as part of its summer duties. Also help with our property evidence unit. The police aid, just to offset some of the concern, does utilize a utility UTV kind of quad vehicle that's 100% electric during the summer months. So this is the winter version of that vehicle for the parking district. Unfortunately, we're still kind of in that position where not a lot of high clearance 4x4 utility-based vehicles are available to us and all electric. I hope that changes in 2021, 2022, and then obviously it's just a matter of balancing emissions with the cost of the vehicles, waiting lists, and the opportunity to retrofit it with some police equipment, center consoles that support radio equipment, that type of thing. So that's some of the decisions that went into this particular vehicle purchase. I will add, and we could amend the recommendation if it's your desire to look at something possibly greener. This particular vehicle, it's a mid-size 6-cylinder truck rather than a full-size 8-cylinder truck. They do make a diesel version, and we have had some conversations around trying to support the biodiesel program that the town is currently researching with our vehicle purchases. At least my understanding is we're still about a year out from really knowing conclusively if that will work and not damage the diesel engines of some of the vehicles that we would acquire or have. And the diesel version's not exorbitantly, but more expensive. And so at this point, we went with the gas version rather than risking the additional $3,000 to $5,000. But if it's the council's desire, we could certainly amend that recommendation and do further research into purchasing the diesel in hopes that the biodiesel program would work. It's essentially the same truck, just more expensive.
How much more expensive?
$3,000 to $5,000.
Okay. And what's in the staff report, there's something about 125,000 miles is kind of what you try to run them to. How long does it take to get there? Is this a 10-year vehicle or?
Probably a little less than that. Okay. It's not as mileage intense as a patrol vehicle, which typically lasts us somewhere from 4 to 6 years, depending on the vehicle itself and who's driving it and how much, frankly, the officers like it. They all tend to drive the same vehicle. It burns through in 4 years rather than 6. But this particular car, because it's utilized by less people, is probably about a 7-year lifespan.
Okay. And I understand there is a need for it to be more of a truck than, say, a hybrid SUV that would have the capability of tapping into the electrical system.
Separate. The size is one, and the truck capabilities. Tapping into the electrical system is always going to be a challenge for us, regardless whether it's an SUV, a full-size truck, or any of the options that are going to be coming out in the next 5 years. That'll always be a complexity because we do create a lot of draw with the emergency lights, the radio, the computer system that goes in the cars, all the apparatus that we put on that's aftermarket. It gets a little sensitive when we start tapping into kind of closed circuits for electrical vehicles.
Right, for all electric vehicles, but currently there's hybrids available that are definitely greener vehicles, less emissions. So is that an alternative? Is that a possibility?
No, you are correct. And the problem with the hybrids is we start getting into a decision about a mid-sized 4x4 high clearance that can still serve as a force multiplier in an emergency because it's a marked unit. It's not something that's an ancillary vehicle or an unmarked kind of civilian version of a car, for lack of a better word.
Thank you, Chief Leftwich.
Yep.
We open this up to public comment, right, as well?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Any other council questions? No. With that, I'd like to open this up to public comment. If anybody would like to make a comment on this particular item, come on up. Seeing none, going to close public comment and either look for some fairly efficient deliberation or see if you want to move this to the end of our agenda.
I do just want to note to the rest of the council that this is my biggest concern here is two things. That we are in the midst of developing a climate action plan that is going to have a plan to transition our fleet to low or zero emissions. And this is going to be a pretty public vehicle. It's going to be driving around downtown. And I really want the town of Truckee to walk the talk. So I would like to consider some other alternatives, or at least maybe consider bringing it back to the next council agenda to just have a moment to be able to deliberate on the opportunity for diesel or one of the other options.
Well, I truly appreciate what you're saying. I kind of feel, I totally agree where you're going with the town in general and the fleet. The part I disagree on is when it comes to law enforcement, marked vehicles, I think that's the last place we should be working and taking tests and trying something out. It has to be reliable, it has to be efficient, it has to be effective for them to do their job. And I'm not sure that's a place we want to take a chance at right now. As they become more sophisticated or better, they can handle it. I totally agree with you. But at this point, not yet.
And I'll just add really quickly, what we could do with the recommendation is, and Andy will stop me if I get a little liberal with the rules here, says the police chief. We could amend the dollar amount to not exceed $44,000, $45,000 should cover the additional cost of the diesel. We could have further talks and just add in the recommendation about authorizing the Public Works Director, Town Engineer to purchase one 2020 Chevrolet Colorado 4x4 truck, National Auto Fleet Group for the amount not to exceed $45,000, and potentially with a diesel engine option. And then that would give us either or without bringing it back to you, or we're happy to bring it back to you with additional information on the diesel version.
And one quick question, Chief. You're looking for this sooner rather than later. I read in whether it was in our staff report or in some follow-up Q&A, which is why you'd like us to make some movement tonight so that you can proceed.
It's not urgent though. I want to make sure I stress that. So this is something that will take us several months to make the purchase and upfit. We're probably into late spring on delivering the truck anyway. So another council meeting, certainly not an issue if we wanted to extend it. I just was trying to be efficient in the process. If council feels the choice is between gasoline and diesel, that's an easy fix. If you'd like us to come back with additional information on why a hybrid economy size, small size SUV is not the right selection, then that would be another council meeting.
Great. How does that work with where you're at?
I'm agreeable to having, giving that flexibility. I just want to make sure that we are thinking that through, understanding where our town directive is going.
Question, Chief. When you're talking about diesel, you're talking about biodiesel, correct?
No, the vehicle is a diesel truck. It's a typical diesel engine. Okay. There is a program that maybe Dan can explain a little bit more about utilizing biodiesel, environmental diesel, for our diesel engines. In a very neophyte explanation, there's some valve seals and ball bearing issues with that we're still trying to work through.
Okay.
Dan, help me.
In 30 seconds or less, Dan.
If the council would like, otherwise I don't need
I gave you 30 seconds, Dan. Can you do it?
We're exploring biodiesel, but also renewable diesel as an alternative fuel for our vehicle fleet.
Okay. Well, you guys have offered your opinions. I'll just say I'm open to allowing for a little more time to do a little more research if that makes sense, and also to give the flexibility if it makes sense to raise the dollar value of the vehicle that it would be purchased, if that gives some flexibility as well. So I'm, I guess fairly open to ideas that would get to the ultimate long-range goal that is being formulated with our climate action plan. So,
is everybody
in an awkward stage because we have to keep going with the town business. We can't stop all of that until we get our climate action plan done. But we also don't want to take action on things that are completely divergent from that.
So does it work with everybody to amend the current action in favor of moving to a not to exceed 45,000 A, and then do you want to see it back in front of us, or is that sufficient at this time? And if so, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move that we approve item 6.7? 6.7 as discussed, to increase the dollar value amount to allow for purchase of a diesel vehicle.
Correct.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 6.7 passes as amended. Tony pulled 6.8, and if you're going to allow me, I'm going to move 6.8 to after 7.2.
I will allow you.
Thank you, sir. So we're going to redo the agenda, so 6.8 will come back after 7.2, which allows us to go back to 7.1. I opened that for public comment. Yeah, we're good. Okay, 7.1, we're going to move into our two major discussion items, and then we'll come back to 6.8, our last consent agenda item after that. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Erica Mertens and Melanie Conti for a discussion of the solid waste foodware report and draft policy recommendations. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So, yep, we are going to present our report on single-use foodware. So our agenda this evening, we will go through some background information, touch on the goals of single-use reduction, talk about the feedback we've gathered from the community, and then Erica will talk about the policy options for consideration. So the problem with single-use foodware is that it's extremely prevalent in our society. We generate 1.1 million tons of disposable foodware each year in the U.S. alone, and this isn't an issue specific to Truckee, it's a global issue, yet many communities are taking action locally. And when we consider disposable foodware, we often don't look at the whole life cycle analysis, but actually the majority of the impacts of disposable foodware comes from the production of these items before they're even used or disposed of. So the image on the right there shows the majority of the impacts coming from sourcing the materials, manufacturing, packaging, transportation, and then a small percentage is coming from end of life, which includes landfills, recycling, and composting, however the items are disposed of. So we've heard from our community and from our council that sustainability and waste reduction are significant priorities. Just as we saw from from the Donner Trail students earlier, this is a big topic with student groups. We've heard a lot about straws and styrofoam from many different student groups in the last couple of years, and this has been a major priority for them as well. And then litter reduction has been a big topic in the last couple of years, and I will touch on how single-use foodware is related to that litter. And actually, about a year ago today, these students were here at council to talk about straws, and just wanted to remind us that this is a big issue for our students, and we're very appreciative for the initiatives they've been taking. So thanks to our Truckee Litter Corps volunteers, we've been able to gather some data on litter found as single-use items found as litter. So these photos show the single-use items we found, and we were able to categorize these materials into different single-use categories. So from just one of the litter cleanup days, we were able to deduce that about 12% of the litter was from takeout food packaging, which includes to-go boxes. About 20% was cups, lids, sleeves, and straws. About 36% was consumer food and drink packaging, which would be items that are purchased at a store as opposed to items that come with your food at a restaurant. And then about 30% was other litter. So with our current waste practices, we do have a recycling and a composting program in place. However, these are not reliable outlets for disposable foodware. We can only recycle plastics numbers 1 and 2, and that is just due to the recycling markets and what is able to be purchased by recyclers. And often, single-use items are grades 5 and 6 plastic. So even if utensils and straws were grade 1 or 2 plastic, they are actually very small and very difficult to capture through our recycling infrastructure. And then with to-go boxes, if they were 1 or 2 plastic, they would need to be free of any food waste or contamination to be accepted in a recycling program. And then with disposable cups, they are made of paper, but they are lined with plastic, which makes them nearly impossible to recycle. So most foodware is not recyclable. And compostables have gained a lot of popularity recently as another alternative to sending materials to landfill. However, our local composters and most composters across the country don't actually accept these items. So bioplastics require extremely high temperatures and a very long time to actually break down. And for those reasons, composters don't allow those materials. So most single-use foodware is sent to landfill. Since we don't have a great single-use option, there are major impacts coming from the production and disposal of all single-use foodware. We don't have a good best single-use option. So our focus is reducing and reusing as best we can. So reducing the waste we produce in the first place and reusing materials more than once have the best environmental impact. So we've conducted business outreach to get feedback from businesses about these policies. We held a business-specific workshop on August 8th. We had about 14 businesses represented there, and some are here tonight, so thank you all for your feedback. We also conducted a survey to follow that up, and we actually called every business and tried to get feedback over the phone and direct them to our survey. And we've also emailed all businesses to let them know about all these outreach touch points. So the feedback we received at the business workshop, we heard from businesses that they are already trying their best to make sustainable choices. They're already taking major voluntary measures to reduce their impact. And the largest question we got was, what is the best single-use option? So businesses are trying their best to do the right thing, but they're still questioning what that best option is. We also heard that fees on disposables may deter business. There were concerns, especially in a tourist economy, that having customers pay for single-use items may turn them away. We also heard that requiring foodware upon request would require additional staff time. It would get in the way of the flow of business and require additional touch points with their customer service, which may slow down their flow. And we also heard that reusable dishware obviously adds additional labor to clean the dishes, as well as additional labor or additional costs with requiring a dishwasher itself and procurement of the reusables. So these are all very valid concerns we wanted to present. From our survey, we heard that about 17% of businesses are providing a discount for customers who bring their own container. About 57% of businesses are providing straws only upon request, and 90% aren't using styrofoam. So our businesses are already taking initiative to do the right thing. And from our conversations over the phone with businesses, we've gathered there's about 5 or 6 businesses in town, food-related businesses that are still using styrofoam, so a very small amount. We also hosted a community workshop to get some input from the community at large. So we had about 60 community members in attendance. About 20 of those were students, and we had 5 or 6 businesses represented. So we had attendees brainstorm the problem with single-use items so that we can start with the baseline to try to find solutions based off the problems. So there were a lot of problems identified, and these are just a couple, but one of them was litter. As we've noted, single-use items are commonly found as litter. There was a problem to the community, there was a problem with greenhouse gas emissions coming from the production of these items, as well as the disposal. We also heard from the community that single-use foodware is very confusing. They're unsure if they should be recycling it, composting it. With all of the marketing around compostables, it was unclear if these items are actually accepted in Truckee composting programs. So we heard from the community that it's just confusing in general. There was also an issue that single-use items are just unnecessary and can most of the time be easily avoided. And then the community identified that single-use items are contributing to our overconsumption culture. So these are just some of the solutions the community came up with. One being requiring businesses to offer incentives for reusables. Another being implementing a deposit system similar to our Green Box program. We could expand that to coffee cups and drinkware. An idea was also a fee for disposables, requiring reusables, and education was a really big one. Like I said, everyone is confused about what to do with reusables, and an education outreach piece would really be beneficial. It was also touched on that we can require reusables at special events. So this is something we can consider to expand the scope of policies, but that's something maybe we can get direction from council on or talk about with a working group, which we're proposing to implement these policies. And then the community also noted that advocacy for producer responsibility would be beneficial to try to support legislation that is putting more responsibility on producers of these single-use items as opposed to putting the responsibility on the recyclers and waste haulers. So now I'll pass it off to Erica to talk about the policy recommendations.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, on this slide you can see a suite of different communities across the state and globally that have adopted similar ordinances and initiatives on either straws, styrofoam, or single-use foodware. Most notably, the EU last year took on a no single-use plastic ban across the entire European Union by 2021. And Berkeley was actually the first community last year to adopt an ordinance that has 3 phases, including starting with upon request, then moving to a fee for coffee cups, and then lastly implementing reusables for in-house with a couple exceptions there. So during our research and kind of background, looking at what the best practices are, what are other people doing, we looked to these existing ordinances to understand some of the best policy practices. Just to reiterate what Mel said about our policy goals, ultimately what we're trying to do is reduce the amount of waste that we're generating in the first place by using less single-use items, and also really reinforce reusing materials over and over again instead of producing them to use them only one time before throwing them out. So the proposed approach that we would take for this
potential ordinance is to phase in policies and product types over an extended period of time, similar to what I just mentioned, how Berkeley has done theirs. They rolled that out over about a 1.5-year time frame, and I'll touch on this in a bit later in the slides, but this is something that would be absolutely critical if we were to take anything on. And also, if you recall, we did a similar phased approach rollout for our recycling programs that we started implementing last year. And so, again, recommending an easing in of policies. The next thing we would recommend is to convene a working group in order to help clarify some of the policy decisions and also formulate an implementation plan. And then lastly, this can't be stressed enough, but we need to have outreach, education, and training, and I will touch on that as we go throughout. These are the 3 policies that we are recommending. What we found from the about year of research and workshops and public engagement is that this is actually a pretty complex issue. There's not one great solution, and so these are the things that we think would be most impactful for our community. And I'll go through each policy in detail, but again, a component of each of these 3 policies would be business assistance and outreach and education at the base of all 3. So the first thing we would recommend is provide single-use straws, utensils, and accessory items upon request only. Accessory items are things like napkins or condiment packages, stirrers, and that type of thing. What would this do? It would ultimately reduce the number of these disposable items that are used and then disposed of. It also would expand upon the state law that is in effect. So last year, California adopted a state law on straws upon request only, but that's for actually only full-service restaurants. So that does not currently apply to grocery stores or fast food restaurants, but we would recommend that this is an equal playing field for all food service related businesses. And the last benefit is to heighten customer awareness by proposing or opposing an option to customers. It forces them to make a choice and think about whether they need that item or not. Some of the feedback that we heard from businesses through the outreach and workshops was that this is really not as simple as it seems on surface level, because while it seems like just offering something upon request does not have necessarily a fiscal impact, it does, like Mel mentioned, have a customer service impact because it can pose a real challenge to the normal workflow of servicing customers, and particularly for self-serve counters, that could be a great challenge. So that would be, if, for instance, if you order at the counter and then you go and get your condiments or your creamers at another counter, having those items upon request would greatly impact the flow of the customer service, therefore adding more labor costs. So some things to consider with this is making an exception perhaps for restaurants that have those self-service bars, and instead allowing just educational signage on the spot. We would recommend that there's signage at the point of sale regardless, and also provide education and outreach for the public as well as businesses. The next policy to consider is providing only reusable foodware items for in-house dining. So that would not allow disposables to be used when consumers are dining in at an establishment. Again, this would reduce the number of disposable items that are used. It encourages the reuse of items, and it also reinforces the waste reduction and sustainable culture that we're trying to build here in Truckee. So you can see there on the right, there is a, instead of maybe seeing a burger on a paper tray, you've got an aluminum tray there that's reusable. Some very practical obstacles are in place for this. And we heard from many businesses, not all businesses have dishwashers, and even those that would like to have a dishwasher most likely don't have a dishwasher because they have space constraints. So there are some practical hurdles to overcome with this. Also, dishes could be costly, and instead of having consumers throw away their items, now there's some labor involved. So that could also be an added cost with more labor. Also, with having reusables, there is the possibility of unintended consequences for incidental loss. So instead of throwing away a single-use item, you might actually, on accident, being throwing away a reusable item that has taken more resources to make. So that's just one possibility that can happen, and to take into consideration. Again, just to build on the kind of challenges that we face with this is factoring in consideration, or taking into consideration possible exceptions for restaurants that do not have dishwashers or have space constraints. Looking to require any future builds to have a commercial dishwasher so that they would be equipped to comply with this if this is something that we move forward with. And then there are a lot of opportunities for technical assistance with this particular program in providing either a grant or a loan program for businesses to procure both a dishwasher and the dishes that are the dishware that's needed to provide reusables, because that's a pretty large upfront cost for businesses to incur. And something else that we might look into would be an expedited building permit assistance for installing a new dishwasher. Because like I said, it's not necessarily just the raw cost of adding a dishwasher, but also the cost of installing one and having an engineer come in and all of the things that go along with that process. And the last policy recommendation is to require businesses to charge a fee on disposable foodware items. This has the potential to have the most significant reduction in the number of disposable items used. Again, it reinforces the waste reduction culture in Truckee. And when we think about a fee, you can think about the plastic bag ban and the fee that was placed on that has significant behavior change impacts. After 6 months of the statewide bag ban went into effect, there was a reduction in plastic bag use by 85%. So the studies have shown that applying a fee has a much more significant impact to curb behavior change, whereas providing an incentive, for instance, yields very little to no behavior change. So this, while seemingly challenging, can have the largest impact out of the recommended policies. An overwhelming feedback that we received from businesses on this particular policy, unanimously, businesses are concerned with how this would impact their business, with concerns of negative impacts on customer satisfaction. In particular, like Mel mentioned, being in a tourist-driven economy, what will people think when they come to Truckee if we have a fee on these items? So that's not to be understated. This was something that resonated loudly from many businesses, regardless of where they are on the spectrum. As Mel mentioned, many businesses are already taking voluntary measures. So I do want to make it clear that this is something that is not strongly supported by businesses currently. One thing I forgot to mention on this last slide is that the potential fee that would be charged would be kept by the business, and that could then be utilized for other to offset the cost of the disposables or to fund reusables or any other dishwashing costs and that type of thing. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration with this potential fee, and that would be what type of items do we want to see this applied to. Currently, Berkeley, Watsonville, Santa Cruz, and Vancouver have all applied this to coffee cups only. So far, there has not been a jurisdiction that has taken on a fee applied to anything beyond a coffee cup. So looking at utensils or accessory items, that would be kind of pioneering this sustainability front. We also would not recommend requiring a fee on to-go boxes because we would not want to have the unintended consequence of deterring people from taking home their leftovers and increasing the food waste that goes to landfill, and which has negative GHG impacts. Other things to look at is what the appropriate fee amount would be. Studies have shown that a 25-cent fee is the most effective to impact behavior change. We also need to consider the implications this has on equity, in particular with affordable meals and how that might come into play. Something that we could look at is having an incentive for bring your own. Again, as Mel mentioned from the business survey, we can see that many businesses are already instituting such a policy. And lastly, we would want to have a lot of public outreach and education about this. We would want to work with businesses to make sure they understand how these policies would work, and also, again, have campaign signage for point of sale. Another program that you might be familiar with is our Reusable To-Go Box program. So the way this works is it's currently operating at the 5 restaurants shown below, and a consumer can purchase the box for $5 one time and then exchange it out at any subsequent visit at any of the participating restaurants. So we would recommend expanding on this program, and to this point, we've kind of called it a pilot, but it's been running for about 2 years now. So we would really like to work on building out this framework and allowing some room for that within an ordinance. Throughout the process, we did look at several other policy options. The first one being a polystyrene ban, or more commonly known as styrofoam. Like Mel said, we have very few businesses that are using styrofoam currently, so we certainly could take on a styrofoam ban, but maybe wouldn't have the biggest impacts because most businesses have already opted out of that. The next thing that a lot of other ordinances have statewide is requiring items that are disposable to be made out of either recyclable materials or compostable materials. Again, as Melanie mentioned, we have a lot of constraints as to what's actually compostable or recyclable here, so we would not recommend that we institute such a requirement, because ultimately this would just be money spent on a more expensive item that would still be landfilled. So to reiterate that the approach we would take is a phased-in approach, and this would roll out policies over a period of time. And the reasoning for that is to allow time for the public outreach and education, the outreach and education for businesses, training of businesses, and allow businesses to phase out of disposable items they maybe already have that may not come into play as we move forward with policy. I don't know if you guys can tell, but we're really big on outreach and education. This is paramount to the success of any of our programs town-wide, but this is something that we recognize is key to moving forward any new initiatives. Something that we've been hearing a lot from our feedback through the process of the Climate Action Plan, Sustainability, GPAC subcommittee is a need to make being green cool. It's something that we struggle with, but something that we recognize in order to really inspire people to make their individual change. We've got to make it the norm and make it a culture here in Truckee. So with our outreach and education campaigns for not just the businesses, but in particular for the public, is really making an impact that the individual behavior change is the key for driving the consumer behavior. And that the old saying of you have to hear something 7 times before it really imprints, we just try to repeat, and get that Keep Truckee Green messaging out there. So we'd like to form a working group in order to balance the diverse needs of businesses, our community, and the environment, which all 3 are our priority here. So we'd like to have representatives from the business community, general community members, and potentially 1 council member in order to get that diverse feedback to have an implementation plan of this complex ordinance. So with closing, I won't read the full staff recommendation, but we basically recommend that we draft a single-use foodware ordinance following our proposed framework, and also convene a stakeholder group. That's it.
Great.
Any questions?
Thank you both. What we'll do maybe is we'll have a quick round of questions from council, and then we'll open it up to the public, and then we can bring it back to council for any more detail or as deep as we want to dive into any of this. One thing I'd like to set us up for is keeping in mind the recommendation, and then when we do bring it back for deliberation, we can I'll break out each of the 3 items, or really 4 policy items that we're being asked to consider, so that we can provide pretty clear direction back to staff, and really talking about the timing of each of those, feasibility, and maybe general agreement, just as we all think about how we want to deliberate on that. Councilmember Tierman, questions?
Yes, thank you, Erica and Melanie. Great report, a lot to consider. Some questions. There was discussion about the various grades of plastics 1, 2, 5, 6. I didn't see, and I probably should have asked this before, but the definition of what those different kinds of plastics are, was that in this study or in your report? Because
I don't believe we included what the definitions of each plastic grade entails. However, most plastics that you commonly run across would be 1, 2, 5, or 6. And it's basically just the different grade of plastic.
Okay.
Most commonly, numbers 1 and 2 are being recycled right now, and that's on a global scale because of the many complex things happening with the global recycling markets.
So is this a federal categorization of plastics, or is this just kind of common knowledge worldwide?
That's a great question. I believe it's an internationally recognized manufacturing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. And you mentioned there are 5 or 6 businesses in Truckee that continue to use styrofoam for takeout food, I take it. Are those national, international chains, or are they local businesses? Because I think we're, in one sense, fortunate. We've got a lot of locally homegrown food and beverage venues, but we also have some big corporate chains. So I'm just curious if you know about that.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think it's split. I think a couple are local businesses and a couple are larger chain restaurants.
Okay, so, but only a handful at this point. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And the cost of a dishwasher, a commercial grade dishwasher, I'm going to guess $2,000, something like that. Is that any sense? Sorry to throw you these curveballs, but these are questions that got prompted.
I would guess that is on the low end, conservatively, with more costs incurred for all the installation and all of the other planning that goes into that.
Okay.
And
we'll
then an answer to that from some of the restaurateurs maybe in the audience if they come up during public comment.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Let's see if I had any more at the moment. And again, just reiterating, I think I heard you talk about the recommended fee rate, maybe 25 cents in terms of, an add-on for a single-use coffee cup or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's what some studies are showing as the most effective number, but I think that's certainly something that could be discussed by the working group.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Klostad?
Well, thank you very much, Melanie and Erica, for your presentation. I feel like I have been pretty involved in this throughout all the steps, enjoyed the community outreach meetings that we had, and those were really informative for me. I'm just wondering if we have any more specifics about the EU's ban. Are they banning all single-use disposables, or are they just looking at coffee cups, or what is their ban?
Yeah, I believe their ban encompasses cutlery, cotton, Q-tips, straws, and stirs. I'm not sure if there's more to that, but I know that it's inclusive of at least that list.
Wow. And do they have an option? Like, can they offer a biodegradable one or one with recycled content, or just 2021, that's it? They're no longer available.
I believe that they are no longer available. I'm not an expert on the EU's policies, so I don't want to misspeak here. But if I could make one correction, Mel just pointed out that I was remiss in when I said that the other communities who have adopted a fee on coffee cups, it's actually on all disposable cups, so not just coffee beverages, but all beverage cups have that disposable fee.
So you go to get a smoothie, and that's going to have the same 25-cent fee.
Correct.
Soda, whatever. Yep.
Right.
Okay, that's great to know. And then, so we are not proposing allowing people to transition to a product that either has a recycled content or is recyclable. That is not one of the recommendations you're making.
That's correct. For many reasons. One is that as we noted, the compostables would still be landfilled, and even if we move to a recycled number 1 or 2, which is allowable in our recycling stream, it's very unlikely that it would ultimately be recycled, because when plastic is food soiled or if there's liquids still remaining, those are considered contaminants to the recyclers. So the likelihood that those materials then become recycled is not very likely, in which case we don't want to impose a greater fiscal burden on our businesses to require them to purchase an item that would still be landfilled.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, if it's not going to get to the desired location, why spend more on it in the first place? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a lot. I do have one question actually honest question. You mentioned Q-tips in that whole list of things. People give out Q-tips in AU with straws and I don't know. Anyways, my three questions. I have a few questions. One, on the fee for each item. Is that like each item? So if they wanted a fork and a knife, be times 2? Is that what you were thinking of, or is in the fee per item?
I think that's the exact type of detail that would be discussed by the working group. As I've mentioned, the only communities who have taken on a fee has been on cups. So we would be venturing into new territory if we did impose a fee on something other than just disposable cups.
No, I get that. I just trying to. If it's on per item and someone needed for some reason 3 items, I don't know. It's another part of my next question here. So the other part of the question would be, I'm imagining walk up, place your order, take your food, go sit down, or that might be a good example. But at some point you've already paid, and you have your food, and you realize you need something. Is that contemplated in what your conversations have been with the groups that you've been talking to and the businesses, and how to collect that extra 25 cents or whatever it might be?
I suppose that would depend on if we're allowing disposables for in-house use or not, because I think the goal would be if you're eating within an establishment, you're using a durable, reusable item as opposed to a single use. So I don't know how that comes into play.
And that's a good point, but I guess I was thinking more in terms of kind of the quasi half in, half outdoor. Might not necessarily be to have some tables outside that they can go sit at, whatever, and not really in-house eating.
Gotcha.
Probably be a working group thing.
Yeah.
And I think we're not necessarily going to get down into that nitty-gritty detail tonight. We'll try to stay high, and then it'll come back to us.
So my other question, and when you guys have been talking through this, because the business response is your idea of the money stays within the business. How is the town looking at that in terms of managing that or enforcing that, or how does that work? Because if they're just taking the money and saving it, keeping it themselves, I'm trying to understand that as well.
I'll take that one maybe if you want, because I'm a business who collects 10 cents on bags, and we keep it, and nobody ever checks on us. And it's a saving thing, actually, and so I'll let staff handle that. But I don't think there's no enforcement necessarily. The cops aren't going around to make sure that we're collecting these fees. It's sort of a in the spirit of things type of ordinance, at least in my opinion. In my personal business, that's how we handle it. Is we try to do the best we can.
And the reason that we can't have the businesses collect the money and then give it to us, or otherwise dictate what they do with it, is because doing that would make it a tax, which requires voter approval. So the only way to avoid having it be a tax is to do like we do with plastic bags, where the business is supposed to charge it and then do whatever they want with the money.
Okay,
And what Berkeley and a couple other cities have done is required it to just be a public policing process. They put forms online where people can notify town staff that, hey, I went to this restaurant and I wasn't charged a fee, or someone wasn't abiding by the new policy. So that's what other cities have done.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody good for a minute? We'll go to public comment.
One more question.
Go ahead.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something I was asking about with respect to the dishwashers. In the discussions with the businesses in town, any sense of the cost of purchasing disposable foodware or, disposable items versus the cost of a one-time purchase of a dishwasher and reusable dishes? Because there's an ongoing cost, right, for a business every year, every month, every week to keep purchasing these disposable items versus investing in in a dishwasher and reusables. So I'm just curious if there was any discussion along those lines with businesses.
I'm not sure we have the exact calculations because, of course, even with reusables, there's some ongoing costs for the water and utilities, for instance, that you wouldn't have with a disposable. I think that's a great question, but all things to consider when you look at the full fiscal impact, similar to how you would need to look at the full life cycle analysis of a single-use item. And I kind of forgot to give you guys my closing remarks, so I'm going to just take this opportunity since I'm still on the mic. We recognize and that this is a large effort and a big ask. We've heard time and time again from the students many of which are here today, which is awesome to see because, like you said, our youth is our future. And I think they're the ones that are going to move us forward ultimately. And also largely part of the reason why we're here tonight. And we heard from council, we've heard from you guys to move forward with this direction, to be leaders in sustainability in our community. And we know that this will take a lot of effort from businesses. But the businesses can't take that burden by themselves. Certainly, the town needs to play a large role in that with the outreach and education, with the training. But also, we need our individuals in the community to take responsibility for their own actions as well. So it really falls on everyone, and we want to make sure that it's not something felt just by the businesses themselves. So I think that's kind of the discussion of taking all of those things into consideration. This is what we're proposing to do to have the most impact on reducing our waste in Truckee.
Thank you. Good. With that, I'd like to open this up for public comment. So anybody wishing to make a public comment, come on up to the podium. Don't be shy. If you do, we'd like to keep it moving so you can kind of line up along the wall over there. You got 3 minutes on the timer over here, and please state your name before you start. And if any restaurateurs, like maybe the one coming up here, want to just give us a quick, tell us how much a dishwasher costs if you were going to buy a new one. We won't count that towards your 3 minutes.
Okay. My name's David Smith. I've been in food and beverage for about 35 years. As far as dishwashers, every restaurant I've ever worked for leases dishwashers through Cisco. So I think they run $100 or a couple $100, depending on your model, a month. As far as the install, I'm not sure. As someone who purchases a lot of single-use items, it's really confusing. There's not a lot of great options out there. You try to buy the compostable things, but they don't get composted, so it's a really difficult situation. I think that just as far as the town, I think doing something and something that we can move forward with is really important. The environment is a huge reason why we're all here. I think we can all agree on that. And having stuff end up in trashing the environment is not good for the future of Truckee. So anything that could be moldable and movable into the future as things develop. And by eliminating a lot of the single-use items, companies like with the straw, there's a company called Aardvark Straws, that's all paper straws. And without that need, they never would have developed. And now that a lot of people have pushed towards that, they've expanded and they still can't keep up with demand, but more and more people will have to get into that business and we'll create things that are usable. So thank you for what am I trying to say? Thanks for
what we
thinking
do
about it. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. So if you want to speak, start coming up now. That'd be great.
Hi, I'm Ben Anderson. I'm one of the presidents of the Environation Club at Truckee High School. I just want to say thank you to Erica and Melanie for the awesome presentation. It was just great to see, and I love how the town's getting involved. From the Envirolution standpoint, I think that this is just a great opportunity for the town of Truckee to show our commitment to the environment, especially because we live in the mountains, and this is just like super important to our like essential values in Truckee. So, and just like how Erica was talking about pioneering beyond the coffee cups and beverages, I think it's just a great opportunity for Truckee to show their commitment to the environment. And yeah, so thank you guys.
Thank you, Ben.
Hi, Evan Anderson. First of all, thank you guys so much for the great presentation. This is the compilation of a lot of great work, so thank you so much for this awesome presentation. And thank you, council members, for your ongoing work to reduce our plastic use in Truckee. I'm not going to be too long, but I have one question for Erica. So you were talking about putting a price, or like a 25-cent tax, well, not a tax, but a price on plastic. So would this be, how would it default? Would it default in a positive direction or a negative direction? So when you get the bill, would it be 25 cents added onto the cost or 25 cents subtracted if you opt not to do it?
We'll take, so questions come to us and then we'll pass them on to staff if we want clarification on that. So, yep, continue to use your 3 minutes, however you'd like.
Okay, yeah, so obviously you guys touched on the impact. It's very important that we reduce our global plastic consumption and our waste and manufacturing GHGs incurred from that. And then I think it's just like really awesome. I'm really proud to live in Truckee in a place that really isn't that big, to be on the same place as Berkeley and the European Union and all those other places. That's incredible. We live in a tiny mountain town. So I think it's just really amazing that we're making such a great effort here in this small community. So thank you.
Thanks, Evan.
Hello, my name is Rylan Cordova, and I'm at Alibi Works. I can touch a little bit more on the dishwasher thing. Yes, you do rent dishwashers, but you have to pay for the chemicals, which are fairly expensive, as well as installing a dishwasher. You have to do it in the parameters of like ADA law, so you have to have quite a amount of space to do that. You also have to have somebody that runs that dishwasher, so you're paying for labor in that as well. As far as the whole other stuff with this, we make a huge effort at Alibi to just not use reusable materials. And I mean, it's just, I don't know if anybody went to the Silicon Mountain presentation last night, but it was on fossils and how the world's changing and climate change and all that stuff. But it feels pretty inevitable that we're going in a direction where we need to consume less and that we need to be encouraging these sort of behaviors. So, I mean, I'm in full support of adding maybe a cost or expense to a single-use item, and then if you do the same thing with like an incentive to like bring your own coffee mug, say maybe you get 50 cents off or something, and then that's a 75-cent swing that might really encourage behavior change. So I think the combination of those two incentives with can really change behavior in this community. So, and hopefully that'll expand around to the rest of the state or whatever. Thanks.
And Rylan, just to clarify, you said that Alibi doesn't use reusable, but I think you meant to say you don't use disposable.
Or disposable, pardon me. We use
okay.
very...
Just wanted to clarify that for the record. Didn't want to put you out there.
Yeah, very little disposable, sorry.
Thanks, Rylan.
A lot of reusable.
Good evening. It's Alex Tolger with Kitchen Collab and Magrog Rotisserie and Platter Fare. We do a lot of hats, a lot of different food, a lot of different options for people. We're a commissary kitchen. We are here to actually bring more food trucks and caterers in the area. Single use is something that's very much on our mind as food truck operators. For the last few years, for Truckee Thursday specifically, we've been mandated to do compostable wares. The cost on that is obviously quite a bit more than non-compostable wares. But at the same time, this is something most of the food trucks locally especially are very excited to be part of. We want to show that we are as environmentally sound as we can be as users of single-use materials. As a kitchen operator, to purchase a dishwasher, it's $2,000 to $5,000 ish, depending on what that that dishwasher is. Like Rylan said, it also comes with labor. The chemicals are very expensive as well, as pieces that go towards that expense, and the space in your kitchen. As the idea with reducing price for having reusable or having a reusable item versus having a expense for a disposable item, that is something that many businesses locally are already working with. Us at Mogrog Rotisserie, we are very open for the idea and are always happy with that. The ordinances that have changed in California so that people can bring their own personal items to be used has always been a source of contention for many food makers, being that we no longer have control of the stream of contact with the product. And if there is a foodborne illness, we are no longer able to be on a liable, or we can't say specifically that we knew that that was a sanitized item and then we put our food in it. So was it the item that was not sanitized, or was it our food that was the issue? Either way, we do often put our products at the farmer's market into people's Pyrex dishes or whatever items they're bringing on site. We are happy to use multi-use coffee, pint glasses, whatever, for all our drinks as well. But I just wanted to say that this is a very big ask that you guys have brought on, and it's a huge project that you've come together with. Thank you for the time that you've put towards this, and it's very good to see that you've come. I mean, it's nice to see that the recommendations are not as cut and dry as many communities have tried to make it, when it won't work for many businesses. So thank you very much. But yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Alex.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jenny Smart, and I own Cornerstone Bakery in downtown Truckee. So definitely a lot of disposables that we're dealing with, coffee cups in particular. Before I voice my concerns that I'd like to see addressed maybe moving forward as we move in a more sustainable direction, is I would like to say that I'm very thankful to live in Truckee and be able to have this dialogue in making broader changes that start at the local level. I do want to make sure that the changes that we implement truly, one, have a positive impact on the environment, but also the local community in particular as individuals. So with that being said, beyond the concern for me as a business owner, I do have thoughts in that potentially a fee on disposables might disproportionately affect locals, and particularly those with lower socioeconomic status. I have customers at the bakery who come in and don't even look at the bill when they pay. I also have locals who are single parents raising children who will come in once every couple weeks, and it's a true treat to get a $2 cup of coffee and a cookie for their child. And while 25 cents might not seem like a lot of money to somebody who's on vacation here in their $1 million house, it could really impact local quality of life for some of our full-time residents. Additionally, customer service expectations really need to be addressed I know we're only kind of at this point talking about coffee cups and cups, but I know with cake boxes in particular, it can be the exact same cake. If it's in a box, somebody will walk out the door with it without a second thought in their mind. If I tried to not give somebody a box or a disposable item for it, it's amazing just to see how the perception shifts and the security kind of goes away when you don't have a box to house something in. And I don't know what the answer is for that, but I know that customer expectations really need to be addressed and listened to through this process. Something else I'm concerned about with dishwashers in particular, being that I recently went through a build out to even open my kitchen, at the end of 2018 is the requirements that Nevada County places on us as well. So not only within the town of Truckee, but at the county level, there are pretty strict warewashing requirements versus for the amount of disposables versus non-disposable dishes that you have. So I think we need to work closely with the county as well in implementing policy. And my time is up.
I didn't even hear a buzzer. Nice. Oh, the buzzer's not working. I wondered if the buzzer wasn't working. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer.
Siobhan Smart. I own the wagon train in downtown Truckee. So I'm happy with most of the stuff except for the fee. I'm going to align with folks that the fact that we're going to charge a fee to change behavior, and then we need signage. I'm going to take photos and say, these people want to change your behavior for a quarter. I think we can be better than this by being good examples, by having the right products in our store. I also think unless you're going to commit an enormous amount of money to teach people that they need to bring with them their cups, their forks, their plates, and their travel bags. We live in a tourist area, so maybe having more of those recyclable garbage cans, I'm not sure what the actual solution is, but a fee, yet another fee, yet another fee, yet another fee. I'm not happy with the fee. Second thing is a dishwasher. So we paid $7,500 for ours, probably $1,000 to the plumber. The fees for the chemicals are insanely high. They have to be tested with the health department to make sure that you have the right amount of bleach, the right amount of this, and then you have to have somebody to run it. So that's not including how difficult it is to come here and apply for a permit to get a dishwasher inside your store. If any of you have applied for a permit, David, I know you have dealt with this, but to just go through the town process to get a dishwasher, I can't even imagine what that cost would be. That's it.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Hello, good evening. My name is Missy Muller. I'm with Sierra Watershed Education Partnerships. It's a nonprofit that works to promote stewardship with many programs, and one of which has many students here tonight with the Envivolution Club and the Eco Action students. One thing that we teach with them is that action fosters hope. And what you're doing here and what you guys have worked on is hopeful. It's hopeful for all of us in the town. And what the last woman was just speaking about of a cost, I get that, but there is always a cost. The cost is whether it's going to be on us or the environment. And I just commend you for considering this. I'm grateful to be a part of this process. I will bring students to be a part of the education and outreach, and continue to support this community and the board in this direction. I think it's a big step, and I'm behind you and want to help in every way. Thank you.
Thank you, Missy.
Hello, my name is Chloe Shecker, and I'm here as a representation of youth in the community, particularly the Envivolution Club. I'm here as a teenager who does use reusables, particularly around town. I have the green box, and I bring my reusable water bottle everywhere, and I keep them in my car all the time just in case. And I know a lot of my friends who also do the same thing. And measures like this especially help with the confidence of taking those reusables into businesses and being able to use them. I can't speak to the business or tourist side of things because I have no experience in either of those fields. But I can say that I believe that discounts would be more effective than a fee when encouraging people to bring in their own reusables. But if choosing between using a reusable coffee cup or a disposable coffee mug, if you're drinking in-house, then I believe a fee might be more reasonable, because it would be choosing a mug over a cup just for wherever you are. And I just wanted to say thank you guys for everything you're doing to help our town. I cede my time.
Thank you, Chloe. Anybody else? Yeah. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Kyla McCarthy Smith. I am here to talk about how I was part of an what's it called? A group called we called the Outlaw the Straw. I think it was 2 years ago, and we came here to talk about how we wanted to ban the straws. We also have this year in our class we are learning about climate change and how our environment has been being affected by that. And I think that if people could help more with straws and cups and all single-use plastics, and it would make a big impact on our environment. So thank you.
Thank you, Kyla. Great job.
I'm Tracy DeRue. I'm the executive chef at the hospital here. I've only been here about 1.5 years, and I love it. First of all, dishwashers. We have a high temp. You have high temp. You have low temp. The low temp machines are the ones that have the really expensive chemicals. Our high temp, it gets so hot, it kills all of the germs. But they're expensive to maintain. Like if our booster heater goes out, it's a $1,200 repair. And the guy comes up from Sacramento. So that was the other point I wanted to say about the dishwashers, is maintaining them. And yes, you have to have a person there to wash the dishes. Couple of things the hospital is against. We've made a lot of headway. We got rid of plastic straws in the cafe. We have paper plates. We have like wood pulp bowls. But our cafe is mostly all disposable. We are getting ready to buy silverware and plates. We just started looking into that. Another really expensive thing to do. It would be hard for us to do things upon request because we are so high volume. We're getting people in and out so fast that everything is self-serve, napkins, silverware. So we'd have to have like an extra person just to give those out. And we are also against the 25-cent fee. The hospital is very affordable for people to eat there. So we see lots of single parents. We see a lot of homeless people in there. And I think that 25 cents to a homeless person would be too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
I'm John Henry Byer. There's an example we're all aware of, I think, that hasn't been mentioned. How many of us take our own shopping bag to the supermarket? Right? Everybody. And hey, they started charging a nickel to get your own paper bag. And we're all now taking, that's all it took. Almost all of us are taking our own shopping bag. So it doesn't necessarily take much. And I don't care whether it's a fee or a discount. You know, it's the same amount of money difference. I'm just saying it doesn't take much to get people thinking and change their behavior. And there's a marvelous example.
Thank you, John.
Last one. Hi, I'm Cleo Wolf, and I can't speak from the business owner standpoint, but I can speak from both a tourist and a full-time resident. So thank you. This is awesome. It's what I spend my days Googling and reading blogs about, and just even to know that there's other people toting around a Tupperware container asking if someone can fill it is cool. And I think that's not going away. And I'm at a point now as a full-time resident, but I would have done the same thing when we were doing the drive every weekend. I'm making choices and spending my money very carefully on which businesses do this. So Alibi, thank you. Like, we go there because of that, and we'll continue to do so. So I think that's my message. It's been said before, but this isn't going away. And the wildfire, no pun intended, not so funny in Northern California, but of when we talk to our peers and folks in the 30s and 40s and 50s and above, it catches on quickly, and I think there's going to be more and more financial consequences. I don't know who those businesses are that use styrofoam, but I'm definitely not going. So I wanted to emphasize that a lot. I hope I can speak on behalf of 30 or 40 people that are spending money in our economy daily. It's a big deal. So thank you.
Thank you. Kaya? Klaya? Klaya, thank you.
How's it going? Corey Sachs. I wasn't going to say anything, but I realized everyone was saying I can't speak from the tourism aspect of it, so I figured I could at least say something. So for the past 5 years before moving up here, I was working as revenue management and kind of pricing strategy for pretty much, I'd say, about 90% of all the resorts on the West Coast. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I have a fairly decent idea as far as selling to tourists. And one of the things that I would just say as part of a working group, if that's what you guys decide to start moving forward with, is paying attention to where the businesses were making money. What we saw and what we would recommend with a lot of the resorts that we worked with and within very, very similar communities. In particular, I mean, I worked with all but 2 resorts in Tahoe. You're not going to lose business. Not only that, you're probably going to gain business. The people that you're selling to is the Bay Area. I mean, that's the largest consumer coming into Tahoe. I don't think they're going to be angry if you stop using single-use plastic. I do think that there are a lot of different ways to do that, and I certainly would say that that is something that businesses should have a very strong word in when it comes to how it is that they're going to do that. But it's just taking into consideration, like, I think that there is a very strong argument you'd be able to make financially for the businesses that are here, and I think that that should be part of it to help alleviate the concerns that they're likely going to have, which I think are super valid. And I think it's, I imagine there would be creative ways to be able to avoid the couple folks that they had mentioned where if you're coming in and you're not able to buy the $2 coffee, I imagine there are ways to deal with that. I don't think that those one-off situations should dictate massive policy for the amount of tourism that we have here. I think that they'd be the kind of things that would be able to be easily worked out as a piece of how we're doing things. So it's just kind of throwing out, I think there's a lot of things that we'd be able to consider. Having done that for a very long time, I know that the businesses here aren't going to get hurt with those kind of things. You see it in almost every other mountain town. I've been super surprised coming here since we've moved here to see things like Styrofoam. I know which businesses we're referring to because we've eaten there once and never eaten there again. And that's not a knock on them. I really want to spend my money at local businesses. But anyway, it's just kind of bringing that up to you guys and kind of bring that as part of the conversation when you're having a working group, if that's what you decide to do, being able to bring in that kind of information for the businesses so that they can feel a little bit more comfortable and feel a little bit more empowered so that they can get behind this fully and participate in a way that makes them feel like they're going to do a good job and not be hurt, which is, I think, a pretty valid concern on their part. So that's that.
Thanks, Corey. Appreciate that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Riley Madigan, and I'm here as a high schooler as a part of the Envirution Club. And I just wanted to talk about the cost, this 25 cents. I know that it's a stretch and it's difficult, but the power is in us as individuals. Like hearing so many people out here say already that they carry reusable containers with them. I think that's inspiring that individuals have done this, and that as a town, we are making so much progress. And I think it's important to remember that we do have this power and we are making progress. And I think that it's important to remember that the way that globally, the community, the world is dealing with this crisis is inspiring, but there are fires burning everywhere. There's disasters everywhere. There's a garbage patch in the ocean that's like twice the size of Texas. It's important to realize that the direction this is going quickly, and that 25 cents may seem like a lot, but the amount of animals that are dying is even more, and the amount of impact that we can have on our community for starters, and expanding in the state. We're hanging in there with Berkeley and stuff like that. I think it's just important to remember that the cost is on the world. So, thank you.
Thank you, Riley.
Hi, I'm Sophia Martin, and I'm part of the Eco Action Club that Missy mentioned earlier. And I had a few questions, like if the 3 or 4 things proposed that would get implemented, like how they would get implemented, and if they would get implemented by the businesses, or if there would be a change with chain businesses or local businesses, if the laws are different between those. I obviously don't know that. And also, I think speaking on behalf as on my peers in the lower generation, oftentimes my teacher, she makes speeches like, the world is in your hands, don't get depressed, that of the state with the environment. And so I just think it's important for people to know that young people are very concerned about, since they have to live through this, and they're concerned about their future and other people's futures. And like Missy said, is the cost going to be on us, or is the cost going to be on the environment? So thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Great job.
Good evening. My name is Kim Harris. I'm a local business owner, and I also did just get back from a great trip in Innsbruck, Austria. And I thought that they did a very interesting thing, is they had the special event out there in one of the town squares, and when you would go up to get a drink, they would make you put down a deposit on a cup. And so if you wanted the cup, you could keep the cup as just like a special thing, to remember your trip, or you turn it back in for your €3 back. So I thought that that was a very interesting idea. And the other thing I wanted to let you know is that when I was telling my husband, we own Truckee Laundry, I was telling him that I was coming to this. And just today, he decided to order, we go through a lot of plastic bags when we wrap up people's comforters after we've washed them. So for our regular customers, we're getting reusable ones. And he was very proud of himself for doing that.
Thank you, Kim. Any other public comment?
May I ask if the public commenters can all fill out speaker cards in the back so I can document your names correctly? That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Great. Thank you all very much for coming out. We really appreciate all that input. That all helps us make better decisions, so keep it coming. With that, I'm going to close public comment, and I'm looking at the clock as 5 of 8, and I'm going to look at the dais and say, would you like a 5 to 7 minute break, or do you want to keep going? I'm seeing yeses. Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to reconvene at 8 o'clock. That gives us a 6-minute break, as a matter of fact, and we'll pick back up at 8 o'clock.
6 minutes.
We're going to get back to business if I'm on. Maybe I'm on.
We're exchanging recipes over here.
Did you get a chicken cacciatore going? You and your chicken? That's why I was going for that. That was like a double joke, you know, only between us. I've been known for that. Probably joking on TV right now. Okay, thanks everybody. We're going to get back to business. You are welcome to keep conversing. Just take it out those two back doors out the back so we can do our thing. We are resuming at item 7.1. We heard some great public comment and are super appreciative of all of that. What I'd like us to do moving forward is let's start with the 4 specific policy items in front of us, and I'll tee those up. And basically what we'll do is we'll go back and forth. If we have any additional questions, please ask them. And then otherwise, let's also maybe just, state sort of where you're at on most of them. I'm going to just guess, but please definitely correct me if I'm wrong. So if we're starting with item 1, which is provide single-use straws, plastic utensils, and accessory items upon request only, to me, this is pretty low-hanging fruit, and I think we can do this. If anybody has any questions on that, please go ahead with questions to staff. Or feel free to chime in on any opinions you might have. And we'll start with Councilmember Commendatore.
I agree it's low-hanging fruit. I'm pretty much with it. I feel good with it.
I have absolutely no hesitation with this regulation.
Same here. See, we're just going to keep cruising like this the whole way. I love it. One's down. And staff, also, if you guys need any clarification on anything from us as we move from point to point, please let us know so that we can provide it and not have to go rewind and go backwards again. Number 2, so this is provide only reusable foodware items for in-house dining. And at least I'm going to tee this up to say I think in the long term, this is a really interesting goal, and I do think it's something that we should pursue. To me, this is something that gets kicked down to the working group to sort of flesh out the details. I don't know that we're going to dig into these exact details here tonight. I don't think we have that information, and I don't think we have super specific policy things in front of us. It's something I'm definitely in agreement with and would like to see it come back to us with some more details and research and phasing and what an education campaign might look like. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and maybe we'll start over here this time.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, just stepping back globally, I support the staff recommendation to move forward with developing a framework, and I think the devil's going to be in the details. And I do think having a working group, convening that group, getting the input from a cross-section of the community, a cross-section of business owners will be important to inform that level of detail. And I think the other plus here is that this is ultimately, when there is a draft ordinance, it will be coming back to us for review and consideration and discussion. So, right? Okay.
We started out this way, and I think it makes perfect sense that we should all be able to evolve back into we only use reusable foodware when we are dining in a restaurant. I know there's more steps to it than that. I look forward to hearing what the focus group comes up with, but I'm in complete support of this.
In general, I'm in support of it as well. The concerns I have, and I'm not probably going to solve them tonight because I don't think we know enough. But a couple of things I heard, the chemicals. We talk about why we do things for a good reason, and now we're moving from one bad thing to another bad thing. Kind of makes me question. It may not be real, but I would want to know more information about that. Putting high-grade detergents into our water system is not a good thing. And so we're fixing one thing but creating a new problem. So that is one part that I'm concerned about with this one. The other one, which I think there's a way to get over, but it is a true cost, and a cost that gets pushed on to businesses. It can be difficult for smaller businesses. And at the end of the day, it's going to get passed on to the consumer, which just adds additional cost to the cost of everything else we do here, living here, cost of food, cost of housing, cost of everything. So it's a concern, but I think there's ways to probably work with that one. But the chemicals, I'm not too sure about. That one really makes me pause.
Yeah, and I think the chemicals makes us pause. I think there's space issues, there's constraints issues. As we heard, there's a huge variety of dishwasher issues, space constraints. So to me, that's sort of the one that should be on that long-term menu. And I think what you heard from the council fairly consistently was keep it on the table, but you're going to have to come back to us with fleshing that out in the future. Is that fairly accurate? And can we all nod heads for the most part on that one?
Yeah, and I think one of their recommendations was looking at some way of supporting businesses in that transition.
Yeah, all of it.
That'll be part of the discussion.
Yeah, incentives, discounts, fast tracks on permits. I mean, that should all enter into the equation when it does come back to us.
I think I nod my head only with the fact that I want to consider it. I don't want it to be in the wording where this is something we're going to find a way to make happen. So I just make that clear, because when you read it, it kind of says these are the ordinances, or this is how we go proceed, and we just figure out the details later on. I'm not even sure it's the right one yet, even though in concept I totally agree with the idea.
So how about if we word it more as in we're really interested in hearing follow-up on really what the best combination of factors, whether in combination, which includes wastewater, which includes dishwashers, which includes getting rid of single-use containers, so sort of like that best combination and mix of actions and policy that are pertinent for the things that we actually have control over. Does that help you?
And I suspect there's some good information on that from the European Union.
Yes. I'm going to skip number 3 for a second, because that's probably going to be our most talked about one, and I'm going to skip down to number 4, thinking it might be pretty easy. Continuing to expand the reusable to-go container program. To me, this is about as low-hanging as number 1, so I'm, in pretty much full agreement here. There's no reason why we shouldn't, in my opinion. Everybody nodding heads.
Congratulations on getting 2 more restaurants. That was awesome. 2 of my favorites.
So, great. Let's come back now to the fee. So, requiring businesses to charge a fee on disposable foodware items. I think there's one thing that I do want to make clear is that I'm, at least as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we're going to leave here tonight after this conversation with an exact policy that is going to go into effect in the next 30 days. I think that we should look at providing some direction and trying to come to agreement on direction so that this can come back to us in more fleshed out detail. So both for the audience and for all of us, just to set that expectation. I would, and then I'll sort of just start with my comments and we can kind of go through it again. But I really go back and I'm a business person, and I was 100%, the bag thing was a total, when I first heard about it, I was like, that doesn't make sense. This is an added burden on business. And I think it was to John's point, it really not only changed behavior of us as a business, but I've seen an incredible consumer change. My business happens to be in the Safeway shopping center. People are always walking around with bags all the time. In my business, nobody even takes a bag anymore. And these are for things that, used to, similar to the woman at Cornerstone Bakery who talked about a cake going out. It's a food item, so I do think it's a little bit different. But people there are consumer expectations, and there also are ways that we just have to, if we're interested in doing that, we can influence consumer expectations, I think, is something that I do feel strongly about. So I'm interested to hear what the rest of you have to say, but I am in favor of moving forward with number 3 here and putting a fee on disposable items after a little bit more study, after a little bit more specific language that can get put around that. And I would, to some of the specifics about chain versus local, I think it applies to everybody, grocery store, chain store, it doesn't matter. If you are conducting business within the town of Truckee limits, I believe you should adhere to the same rules as everybody else. And number 2, I believe it should be a fee and not a discount. So I'll start there. And I think it should be a single fee. I think Councilmember Commendatori's points, are we going to charge 5 cents for a cup and 10 cents for a knife and 5 cents for a fork? No, that's crazy. One fee for any type of disposable item basically would be where I would stand on that. We have to keep this really, really, really simple for people to be able to do it, and it would be along the same program, at least in my opinion, as the bag fee, where it's self-assessed at every business. If you have a homeless person or somebody who you feel is in need, or you feel you want to gift them their to-go cup for the day, that's completely up to you, and you should be able to do that. Nobody's going to come and slap you on the wrist for doing that. That's a personal thing that you might want to do, and we have a change jar. Take it out of the tip cup or something like that, at least is my opinion. So that's where I stand, and I just wanted to frame that up for all of us as we go forward. So how about you, Councilmember Tierman? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that my preference would be to incentivize a change in behavior and use, to go the incentive route. I like the example that Kim provided from Austria. That was an incentive to get your money back. And that would be my inclination, would be first to try that versus the imposition of a fee on all of these items here, cups, utensils, accessory items. Yeah, and then, I think this is another one that would be good for a working group to dive into in a bit more depth and come back to us. Maybe this is a follow-up discussion, but right now, that would be my inclination. Try to incentivize behavior change versus imposition of a fee, versus doing it through the imposition of a fee.
Vice Mayor Klofstad.
Well, I really enjoyed hearing all the commentary tonight. There was a lot of great feedback that I know staff will take into consideration as they bring this forward. I have absolutely no reservations in requiring restaurants to charge a fee on cups, utensils, and accessory items. I love the idea of hanging with Berkeley and the European Union. I think that's what Eben and Ben were talking about is kind of where we should be setting our sights. I also really think that we have an opportunity here to create a future that our children can embrace and feel that they can be a part of. They were speaking very clearly tonight. And they were focused on the fact that this was their burden to carry forward. And so we have an opportunity to lessen that burden. And I think we should really take it. And I'd be happy to be the poster child for this. You can post my face up anywhere you want and say I'm requiring this change because I'm in support of it.
Councilmember Commendatori.
Everything about me, Lean, always wants to do things off incentive. I'm not a fan of calling it a fee. It ends up being additional costs. And I've said it a couple times tonight, keep adding costs, we keep adding costs. So from a business standpoint, my business would never be affected, but I'm concerned about businesses and how they are affected. And I think your example is actually a good one, that in that case, it was been pretty easily accepted and easily administered, much more than you probably thought originally. I think food's a little different, and you recognize that, and I think that's an important part of this. So I'm at the end of the day, I'm all about incentives, and I'd rather focus on incentives. I do understand that fees do change behavior, and it's a great idea. I mean, I want to change behavior in things. I want to encourage people. I want to do it through education. I want to do it through incentives. I don't necessarily want to do it through adding additional costs to businesses or adding additional bureaucracy or adding additional fees and costs to the consumer. I do agree, all inclusive. And the last thing I'll end on is, I don't know, maybe I'm old school or something, but Berkeley is a way of, they do one thing one way. They're way far away from here. We have Truckee up on our wall. Let's do it our way, the right way, the way we should do it for our citizens. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind, because not everyone agrees with how other places do it. We need to do it the right way for our group of people, and not just because other people are doing it. So I'll end it on that.
Okay, so that's great. We're split. So I'm going to, let me ask a question of the rest of us, because there's the difference between a fee and an incentive, in my opinion, and an incentive means that a business has to raise the price. So in order for a business to get the same, let's say a cup of coffee costs $1. That's what they currently charge for a cup of coffee in a to-go cup. So an incentive, $2, $3. I bring my own, so it's $1. When I bring my own cup of coffee, it's $1. Thank you. So I don't know, 7-Eleven, it's $1. There you go. Shop wherever you want, but I bring my own cup, so I actually have no idea what it costs when you don't bring your own cup. But hear me out, because where I was trying to go was, for a business to provide an incentive, they're actually they're providing a discount. As a business person, discounts are bad. That means you're losing margin. By charging a fee, you're actually recouping the cost of said cup, and you can choose to reinvest it however you want, whether that's to buy more cups, to charge more fees on, which might in turn make you more money, or you reinvest it in your staff, you put all your quarter-cent cup fees into your tip jar. I don't care, or you put it in your people who can't afford it jar, right? Something like that. So I'm just trying to get us to a point where we can provide staff direction, because 2 to 2 doesn't help staff, as we've learned in our priority setting exercises.
Let me say this. Yeah. I'm not necessarily saying incentive has to come out of the business side of, and I don't know the answer at all. Obviously through outreach, through education, is a big part of it. We as a town, finding ways to incentivize. I threw out this, maybe it's a silly idea, but maybe partnering with the chamber to recognize businesses that partake in this kind of behavior, providing multi-use type products. Doing things like that is my way of incentive, not necessarily from your version, which I understand your version, and I actually appreciate that. And I'm looking at more from a bigger side. What can a town do to encourage the behavior in ways, and put our time and energy in the right spots and create something, versus putting it back on the business, because that puts it back on a business, what you described. And I'm trying to avoid that as well. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. We heard from staff that there were 17 or so businesses in town that are offering incentives, right?
I believe that's actually 17% of the 17%. Businesses who responded, and we had about a third participation rate of the food service businesses. Okay, all right. So it'd be interesting to understand how their business is managing that sort of incentive. And you think about, okay, if a coffee a venue or outlet offers a discount on a cup of coffee if you bring your own mug,
they're also saving money on the flip side on not giving out a disposable cup, right? They're purchasing disposable items, and maybe the volume of that purchasing starts to go down the more people are bringing in their own cups. So there's a sort of a balancing act there, but we haven't, on the issue of the fee, did you have a particular fee in mind? I mean, could be a significant range in behavior impact depending on what that fee might be, right?
Yeah, so I don't. I just really have seen, I've seen unbelievable success with the bag fee. I think that is an example of how personally I choose to lead. I think we're up here, and to change people's habits in a way that is in some ways very simple. I see the same people every 5 days a week go in and out of the exact same coffee shop with a disposable cup every single day. Right? So, I don't know how you change that behavior other than through the purse or through the wallet.
So the bag fee was what, 10 cents?
The bag
right?
fee is 10 cents. So I'm not necessarily here to prescribe a fee. I'm going to kick that down to the working group and have them come back to us, with what might work. If it's 10 cents, it's 10 cents. I think that's great. I personally, and I think in order to put legs under a policy, if we're going to go this route, it has to be consistently enacted, implemented. Thank you.
And I would just like to follow up on that. If we are going to do this, if we are going to expend the time and energy and resources to set this policy, don't we want it to be as effective and successful as possible?
Of course.
And it seems to me that the studies and the recommendations show that a fee is a lot more effective than a discount. And so that was a big selling point for me. I mean, I've been bringing my own reusables everywhere, and I love it when I get a discount, and I go to the places regularly that give me a discount. But I'm with Mayor Pallavi. I see the same people going in and out of the same place, and this is a habit change that I feel is very within our reach, especially after the success of the single-use disposable bags and how that has quickly shifted. Even my husband, who now brings his own reusable bags.
And I'll be the first business owner, and I'll sit here as the mayor and say, do I give people a bag sometimes without charging them? Absolutely. I do. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. And so I don't want us to feel like we're, coming down with the hammer. This is meant to be a flexible policy that sort of drives change over time and is not meant to sort of just, totally solve the problem tomorrow.
I think it's also important to point out that we do have great partnerships in the community that are here and willing to help us with that, not the least of which is the Eco Action Club and Envirolution Club, but also Sierra Watershed Education Partnerships and a lot of other businesses that are willing to be the lead on this, much like the ones that have chosen to take on the green box. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration and support.
Okay, but I want to say this, that it wasn't the 10-cent fee that changed behavior. It was the banning of the plastic bags that changed the behavior. That was the starting point. And it seems like, the 10 cent is certainly a disincentive, or it's an incentive to bring your own bag, but we banned the plastic bags. That was where we started. So that's why I want to really think this one through and, carefully.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there was a time, I believe, plastic bags were chosen because we wanted to save the trees and use less paper bags way back when. I think that was one of the things. But the point being is we don't know what the unintended consequences are. And again, I'm going to push that one spot. I'm not saying put I'm saying let's look above, let's look further. It's actually, maybe a fee changes things, but so does peer pressure. So does cultural changes within a town. And this town is kind of driving that way. And you can keep pushing it along without having to go down a fee process. In my mind, I get the benefit. It's probably much faster. The effect will be probably felt more quickly. But there's other consequences that come from that. And again, it's not that I'm against the idea of businesses trying to find ways to reduce single-use items. I'm so for that. That's great. But businesses that are who are doing the right things and are being supported by the members of the community, because that's what the community cares about, to me is a more powerful thing than saying, sorry, you have to start doing this fee process because we want to change behavior. Let's change it for the right ways, change it in the right way for the right reasons, not just because we want to slap a penalty on someone. And not that I know we don't want to, but that's a big issue for me.
So what are the right reasons? Because there is a cost to this, whether it's borne by the business or the consumer or the environment.
Well, this is a consumer issue. This is a societal issue. This is not a true business has to have the whole brunt by itself. So changing a cultural change coming from and kind of my example, I gave an example. Have the town has resources. We have the ability, we partnership with the chamber, finding ways to spotlight and change and push businesses, because if there's a big push like that's out there, that people will start to continue to fall down that road of, you know what, I'm going to support that business. I'm going to support the businesses that are doing the right things because I care about my environment. I'm going to do the right thing. If it goes back to all money, they're going to spend the money in the right places. And it will happen. You can't change everyone, but it's kind of more of a philosophical change in my mind and driving that.
No, I appreciate that. Let's see if we can come to agreement. Jeff wanted to say something, and then we'll bring it back over here.
Yeah, I would just suggest that I appreciate you saying, Mayor, saying that a 2-2 doesn't give staff clear direction. On the other hand, I think it actually does in a sense, and it gives the working group a lot of food for thought. This has been an absolutely terrific conversation, and it's exactly the conversation that these guys have been having with businesses, and we would continue to have in the working group. I think what it does is it pushes the working group to work a little harder to figure out if there's a middle ground, if there's an answer, if there's a way to do it that doesn't feel like a fee. I mean, I don't have the answer, but I don't know that you should feel like you somehow have to wrestle this to a 3-1 or a 4-0.
I wasn't going to do that. What I was going to suggest, actually, if it's okay with everybody, is that I kind of agree with exactly what you've said. Is I think we've all articulated, 4 fairly distinct viewpoints, and that's really healthy. And basically, what I think needs to happen is, the working group can come back, and I absolutely think this might start as an outreach and education campaign, and further down the road turns it. Once we feel super confident in that outreach and education and some of the materials that are out there, and you as the poster child saying bring your own cup, and we really feel like we've exhausted everything that we can do on the outreach, education, incentive front, and then we bring it back and we say, hey, do we think we made it far enough? Are we happy with the results so far? And maybe come back and have a chance to say, now we're not at 17%. Now we're at 95% of the businesses providing an incentive, right? I think that gets to a little bit of what we're all trying to see, which is a change in behavior. So, we're not taking action, right? We're not voting on this right now. So I'm just going to kind of look around and that's what I'm hearing, and I'm trying to summarize it and move us, to the next piece is outreach, education, business assistance, utilizing all of the tools in the toolbox, whether it's the chamber, the TDMA, the Keep Truckee Green crew, and the poster children and the school clubs, and really anybody who wants to be involved in this, but having the working group sort of move this forward in a robust way, because I think that's what we all did say, is we want to see it moved forward. It just might not be exactly the time for a fee, but there could be a lot of other things done in the meantime.
Yes. Yes.
Disappointed.
For the record, we will record that. Does that give staff enough direction for the time being? And also, so do you want us to take action on what's in front of us? There was a recommended action. So would you like us to actually formalize an action here? Andy, anyone?
Be helpful because of the working group.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to think about is if you are going to have a working group of stakeholders and community members, that's a Brown Act body, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Just be aware that that's what it is. So if any of you are thinking that you want to be part of that, that's one more Brown Act set of meetings for you.
It's only Brown Act if there are two of us. Right?
Well, no. If
one?
you see,
Sorry.
Okay. Here we go. So, a group made up of only two of you and nobody else. That's on an ad hoc basis. No Brown Act. Almost any other group, a group made up of three of you. Well, that's a council meeting, or a group made up of 0, 1, or 2 of you that involves anybody else who's not on the council is a Brown Act group.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you convene a working group, that's something that we'll be agendizing and staffing.
A working group that does not have a council member.
Sure, and then it's somebody else's Brown Act headache, not yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, do we want to add this? This isn't a committee. This is different. I'm just trying to get my terminology down.
For Brown Act purposes, it doesn't matter what you call it. I mean, if the council organizes it or directs that it be organized, then you've created a Brown Act group.
What if we organize it?
Well, on the other hand, if you tell staff, hey, can you go find some people to talk to who can weigh in on this sort of thing, then you haven't really formed anything. You've just told us to go talk to people. And so there's no Brown Act issue.
That's probably what we want to do.
So kind of what we're talking about is proceeding, Mr. Mayor, we're talking about proceeding as we have been with putting the groups together with staff and continuing the work that we've started. So we may be able to do it more informally without creating the bureaucracy part of it.
Is there a council member that wishes to be a part of that group and create a more formal enterprise at this point?
Well, I guess I would just like to understand if there were members of the community that were particularly interested in this issue and it's not a Brown Act activity, how are they going to know about it?
Well, the same way they've known about it up until now. We've reached out in every possible way we could to invite everyone who wants to participate. So we'll have to refine that somehow, but
it would not include public posting.
It probably wouldn't include a formal agenda, but it would definitely include their flyers and their public outreach that they do now.
And I'm just being sensitive to the public comment that we received, that it took her 5 minutes to find the agenda item to comment on. So there appears to be a perceived layer of complication and hindrance to know when these activities happen.
That was a specific council item agenda versus, I think, the specific outreach that they've been doing, which is
commenting on this agenda
right, to the individual businesses.
Yeah, so we're talking about them convening with businesses, but I think the public clearly has shown an interest in this as well. And so I'm trying to understand how that is getting accommodated with this working group.
I think ideally we'd like to have members of the public involved in addition to business stakeholders. So we need a diverse group in order to have a true representation of what the needs are of the community and businesses, so that it's not one-sided any one direction. I think if we're not going to do it in a more formal manner, we have some individuals who have been more engaged than others that we might be able to pull from. I'm not sure exactly the procedures.
So, do we want to create a working group?
I kind of, one of the problems we've talked about and other things is getting a broad participation of enough people. And if it's too narrow, if it's too hard because the methodology to get people involved, and you guys sound like you've already tried pretty hard to get enough people involved, we might need to make it a working group and make it more formal to have a better shot at getting enough people. So
I think they haven't had any problem getting people interested, both businesses and public, as far as I understand, right? I mean, it's not like you've had to, right?
I would say, as far as talking trash goes, this has been our by far most popular topic of conversation. We had 65 participants at our fall workshop, and that's about 65 more people than we typically get at a public workshop for solid waste and recycling. So not to be so off the cuff about it, but I would say that there is a large amount of public interest. In regard to the businesses, it's always difficult to do business outreach, and we certainly appreciate the folks that made the effort to come out tonight, many of whom have come repeatedly and been involved in the process because they have businesses to run. They have other bigger fish to fry than talking to us about town policies. So yes, we have a lot of interest. We have varied success with our business engagement. For full transparency, because I don't want businesses to feel underrepresented as we go down this path. We want to have the full engagement in order to make policy that's thoughtful and works for everyone.
I mean, this screams to me like chamber. I don't know about you guys, but to me, this is like a really great opportunity for a partnership with the chamber to get some work done in a meaningful way that is not dictated by us. It's in partnership with us. I think you guys can help drive the train, but the chamber is our business convener. I mean, if we're trying to get businesses to the table for matters that are important, I think we need to sort of ring that bell and make sure that they're aware that this is an issue of importance to the business community, and have Erica, you and your staff work closely with the chamber to come up with an outreach plan that works.
I have a hesitation with that, to be honest, because yes, we are talking about impacting the businesses, but I think we're also talking about trying to accommodate the desire of our community to make a change. And so I'm hesitant to make it too business centric. I think we need to also be looking at who we are serving. And to that end, I feel that if I'm leaning now towards an official working group, because I feel if we make that effort and we publicize these meetings and we say, this is your opportunity to come and give your feedback and be heard, then at the end of that process, we can say, we received the input and this is what we got and this is how we made our decision.
Well, I think we all actually, I think the direction is pretty clear, actually, in the first half, is that all four of us actually agree. We all agree that this is an important issue and that we would like to see single-use items reduced or eliminated in our town. I think we all agree with that. I think the question is just how to get there. That's the thing. So I don't think it's on a table to say we're still debating whether this is an issue or not. I think whether it comes from the chamber, and I think that's a good idea. I mean, I could do either way, but getting the chamber involved, we want to get the businesses more involved in this, in a lot of decision making. They need to step up, and kind of making a partnership with them is actually might be a great way to pull them in, because it will affect a lot of businesses in town. So again, I don't think we're trying to change anything. I think we're just trying to figure out how to get there, and that's what's on the table, not should we or should we not.
So I'm on board for a working group. Let's do this. I mean, if that's what we need to move this forward. Otherwise, we're going to keep going in circles, and we need to provide some direction and keep going here. So I'm fine with a working group.
Yeah, I support a working group as well, because we're really at a transition point. We still have some policy discussion here with regards to that last item, but we're at a point where we're taking policy and implementing and drafting ordinance, and that is really getting more precise. And you're not going to want 65 people doing that. I think you're going to want a working group, a smaller group, whether it's 10, that has the right kind of representation from the community, the business community, other stakeholders. So I support that as well. And I don't think we should have any fear of the Brown Act.
No, I agree. So I've moved on that too. Okay. Would you like to make a motion? Do we need a motion? We sort of do, right?
We need a motion, or
it would help us a little bit. I mean, are you wanting to give direction about the composition of the working group at all, or do you want to leave that to Erica?
Back to that, yeah, no. No, we're not going to give you we're not going to give you that level of detail right now. I don't think. No. We'd like you to either come back, or we'll put it in your hands. But I think we're leaning towards working group.
Yes.
Making it happen. Do we want a council member on said working group?
Yeah, the staff recommendation, I believe, said that would make some sense just to have a connection point, but that's one more meeting that you get to listen to Ralph M. Brown Act stuff.
I'm sorry.
We're saying we do not need a council member on said group at this time.
But council members could attend.
Council members can attend if there's potentially a planning commissioner out there who's waving her hand who might want to attend because she just likes going to meetings. We'll take you.
Less than a quorum.
Less than a quorum.
Every time, less than a quorum.
Right.
So a motion would be helpful to us just so we can memorialize what it is that we're doing.
Great. Who would like to craft said motion?
Well, I think said motion is in front of us largely, unless, and that would be to move forward with the staff recommendation, directing staff to draft a single-use foodware reduction ordinance following the framework as outlined in the staff report. Any adjustments to that first item? Okay. And number 2, to convene a working group of stakeholders and community members to help develop an implementation plan of a single-use foodware reduction ordinance.
Slight modification, you might want to say
with the feedback included.
With the feedback included, because it modified the staff report, or the staff report just a bit.
We did change 3 around a little bit, so it's not
a little different.
It's not exactly as outlined in the staff report. So maybe incorporating discussion,
incorporating the direction from council.
Yeah. Okay. On the item number 3.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
I think 2 as well, actually.
Okay.
A little bit.
All right.
Second.
So, Councilmember Chairman was made the motion. Commendatory seconded.
Is that motion clear?
The motion. Judy, would you like to read us back the motion?
No.
You're good? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes in its wonderful form. Not our cleanest motion ever. Great. It is messy. Item 7.2, staff report, council 2020 team building summary. Judy's going to move in for this one. I'm just going to tee this up for everybody as well. So for members of the public and staff, council, along with all department heads and town manager, did a 2-day team building session, third week of January. What Judy's going to go through is some of the high-level stuff that came out of it. We had a wonderful facilitator who created some discomfort, who also created some comfort and drove us, and why we keep referring to these priority settings and other activities is that's basically what we did for 2 days. So without stealing your thunder, Judy, are you ready?
Certainly. Took the first 2 slides.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Not good. All good.
I was giving you time to get in there,
Perfect. So this slide is.
It is.
It is. This slide is your 2019 goals, and you had just a few minutes in that packed 2 days of team building and priority setting to affirm that you still think that these are that we're committed to these goals today. Out of that process, at your priority setting came 3 goals that you wanted to put emphasis on for 2020. So in addition to the goals that you see on the wall, there were 3 opportunities for a little more specific direction to staff. The general plan community engagement was the first priority discussed, and that's really to create more engagement from the public on the general plan 2040 update and check in with the community on a broader level to ensure that their opinions on what Truckee should look like in the future are being heard. The second was housing. This priority has been a council priority for quite some time. The specifics provided at the team building really talked about what was to be accomplished this year with funding set aside by council for housing specifically. And the third one was a phrase coined by the facilitator, creating raving fans. And that really has to do with a marketing effort, letting our community know about what resources we provide, who's providing them, and why we're passionate about our community. And things that we don't want to be forgotten, the things we do every day: we plow roads and maintain streets, animal services and police services. We ensure the built environment is safe and appropriate. And then other things that were top priorities for 1 or 2 council members, but not necessarily rose to those top 3 for the year, that staff is still continuing to pursue, are supporting the Friends of the Library, the leadership role in fire safety, and the economic development of West River Street and the streetscape project on West River Street. So it looks like Jeff is keyed up to add comment, and if not, I'm open to questions.
Just one tiny one, and that is, if you go back one slide.
Sure.
The climate action planning and sustainability efforts, I think, would fall in that list of high priority for, but didn't quite get to the top 3, but continue on, kind of a high priority, but not highest.
Thank you. So I wanted to bring this back for all of us to just have a chance. We all sort of left there with, at least I did, with a lot of emotion, both in a lot of different ways, and took a number of days to sort of figure out what happened and how we got to where we were and what we were doing. And we're about 3 weeks or so removed from that, and really just wanted to bring it back for all of us after we've had a chance to digest it. I don't know if we have any questions necessarily, so maybe we'll open it up to public comment and then bring it back for deliberation. Are there any burning questions? This isn't really a question type of thing, but so I was going to open it up to public comment and then really just give everybody a couple of minutes to reflect on however they want. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to, no pressure. But if you want to add anything or just chime in with some other thoughts, I think this would be a great opportunity to do that. And hopefully we're all just going to move along and sort of drive this train together and provide the best leadership that we can for this community, because that's what we're up here to do. So with that, I'd love to open it up for public comment.
Good evening, Mayor Polovy.
I think you're good now. Yep.
It's on.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Polovy and Town Council members. I'm Louise Zabriskie, President of the Friends of the Truckee Library. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the Friends to thank you for the Town Council members for including the new library in your 2020 goals, so your town goals. We really appreciate that. We also appreciate your support in our ongoing collaborations that we've been holding with Nevada County, the town, over bringing our vision for a new library to fruition. And we just had a meeting yesterday, and I have to say that we're making progress, which is very exciting and very encouraging. So we appreciate your support. And I also, when I was reading through your top 3 goals, I saw that one of them is increasing your capacity and you're in developing and increasing your expanded communication with the town of Truckee and the community members and visitors. And so I wanted to bring up something to think about, that a new, modern, spacious library that is a very important civic institution historically and today, and that it is creates a very prime spot for a forum. It creates a forum for town and communication and information where community members gather. And today, libraries are becoming even more important because they're increasingly becoming the very important place where it builds a social fabric of communities. And this is a big change that's been happening just in the past 20, 30 years. So my purpose was really to thank you for your support, but also for you to hold in your head the importance of that vision for a modern library that creates the potential to have good increased communication, which you're striving for, with our community. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Louise.
Yep.
Well, I'm Andrew Cross, Truckee Lumber Company, and that was pretty intense meeting you guys had there. So congratulations for getting through that. Of course, I agree with your guys' top 3 initiatives. I mean, they're all really important. And following that, I understand that you have some other initiatives going. I just don't want you guys to forget about revitalizing some of the downtown portions that are coming up. We're moving the lumberyard. It's going to happen within the next 6 months, and we're going to have just an abandoned space down there. We have plans. We have developed an application to redevelop 2 sheds that are going to be abandoned warehouses in downtown. So just don't forget about us. You know, we're still here. We're a big part of this community. I know housing's number 1, but so is downtown, and I would like to still be remembered also. So that's all I got. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andrew. You'll always be in our memory. No worries. Any other public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, I will close public comment. And does anybody want to start? Councilmember Commendatore, Vice Mayor Klostad. It's up to you guys. And if you don't want to say anything, there's absolutely no pressure to say anything.
I'm happy to say some stuff, and because I'm starting doesn't mean it's my last moment. No. I might want to say something else later on too.
You can do that.
Or I might not. I haven't decided yet. I concur with kind of maybe how you felt when we left. I feel like there are a few of those items that were all of those items are important. The ones that made the top 3, the ones that didn't make the cut. I don't know. I felt a little unfinished, I guess, is probably at the end of the day. It was rushed at the end, and I would like to find a way to spend a little more time on some of that stuff. I would like to vet a few of even my own idea in one of the non-top 3 ideas. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's right. Just like to vet all these ideas a little more. But saying that, one thing I do have, I said when we had our little 4-hour mini team meeting that I brought up, and I kind of got a comment back from different people in that meeting, was about the diagram. And I'm not as open to just accepting the diagram as it was in 2019 and again in 2020. The reason being was, one, to me it's misleading in the sense that, well, unless unless I really do understand it, that the top three are all larger font. They have an overreaching type of philosophy that's kind of governing where we're coming from. And the bottom group are smaller font, and those are only handled based off of how they affect the top. It's kind of the way I read that. I think I kind of heard that. So I would like to, if we're going to go back and have new goals, like we kind of have, whether those are the three or we adjust them or whatever ends up at the end of all this, is also to make sure that that diagram matches kind of more what all four of us or five of us across the table here. That was just one of my concerns about that. I won't beat that down. The other thing, and actually kind of Andrew's comment, which I think he was saying, because he had mentioned it to me before once, is while we're creating priorities, and I think this is one of your issues, Mayor, was priorities. We have lots of priorities, we have lots of things, and it causes the town staff to try and fit a lot of things in a very small area, and resources are stretched, and we don't get anything done. And I'm very, very sensitive to that. With what Andrew's comment, I think what he's getting at is kind of the stuff that we do every day still has to be done. And when we're going through whether GPAC or other things in town, we can't, the world doesn't stop. Things keep on going. People have investments in places. They have money sitting. They're doing stuff. They have to keep moving forward. And just because we're trying to figure our priorities out isn't always fair to the rest of the community, that they have to stop and wait. I think that's where he was kind of going with that. And so I would like to say that in planning and some of our things, I don't know how to get there yet either, but we need to still keep doing everyday governance stuff, and we can't stop just because new issues are coming along. So that's kind of an overarching thing. So I'll stop there for now. Hold my spot, then I might come back.
Copy that. Vice Mayor Klofstad.
Well, we definitely, I think all agree, we felt a little rushed at the end. The focus of this retreat was a little bit different than last year, and so now having the opportunity to reflect back on it, it was exactly what we needed, and it's moving us forward in the way that that staff really needed clear direction on. And I had my list of things that I wanted to really just kind of confide in the rest of you that, hey, I want to work on this, and I want to see that happen, and I want to consider funding blah, blah, blah. But the more I reflect on it, the three goals that we ended up with really are the overarching focus of this coming year. And that's what we did. This is not what we are committing to doing for the next 10 years. This is what we're focused on for the next year, what we hope to accomplish. I think they were specific and fairly short term to be accomplished in that time frame or nearby. And the majority of the rest of my items that I've been accumulating for the last year to share with my other council members really are going to fit within those. And it's a matter of making sure that I'm cognizant of speaking on behalf of those during our other activities, and that's going to include our budget process and the climate action plan meetings and the general plan update meeting and the climate vulnerability task force. And so I'm going to organize my thoughts and my list of hopes and dreams for our community, and I'm going to try to incorporate those and carry those forward, because I really do think that accomplishing the general plan update with a full embodiment of our community and community input is going to ultimately accomplish all of those goals. My challenge is really just with the timing of everything.
Thank you.
So the retreat was a healthy exercise. This particular one happened to be my fourth, and this one was far more provocative in a way in terms of style than the other ones. but I think it ultimately did lead us to a focus on top priorities and hopefully some clarity for staff. And feeling less that there were way too many priorities and maybe having a bit more focus. So I think that's a good thing. Kind of going down the list, or maybe before I go down the top three and offer some comments on each one of them, I think an underlying important consideration here, and I think you touched on it, Tony, was that this doesn't mean we set aside everything else and not conduct business as usual. We've got a very vibrant economy right now nationally and certainly in our town. A lot of things are happening. We've got a pretty amazing list of projects in the pipeline that have been in the pipeline. So I think it's going to be important to figure out how we continue to service those, and that kind of ties into creating raving fans, how we continue to service those projects and keep them moving forward while we also focus on the top three priorities that were identified coming out of the retreat. So for me, just comment on the GPAC exercise. This has been going on now for a couple years, I think, almost 2 years. Yeah, almost 2 years. I think we probably have another year and a half or so ahead of us. I think it's great to really finish off the next year and a half in a very vibrant, engaging way with the community. I think that's important. I just want to make sure, though, that when we're doing that, we did not say moratorium on projects. That was a discussion we had a year ago, and I just want to make sure that we are in agreement that we have things in the pipeline that are going to continue to move, and if it means more resources for community development or other departments, then please bring that to us if you're feeling that more resources are needed, and that could be part of our budget discussion coming up as well. Second thing, housing. Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. Most housing projects are two to 3 year shelf life in terms of inception to completion, but we've got some innovative ideas and maybe ways we can figure out during the course of this year how to push the funding forward and make things happen more quickly. So totally support that. And then again, I think the create raving fans, Louise, in your comment, I thought your comments were good because this is a pretty all-encompassing priority, and creating raving fans means that we're really good and attentive to everything we do in every respect. So I guess I'll just leave it at that for now. So. And reserve the right to come back like Tony.
Everybody wants the right to come back. I'd be remiss if I didn't allow either Jeff, town manager, or any of the department heads to chime in as well. This is, it was a joint exercise between all of us. So, if there was anything that any department head or Jeff wanted to add, let us have it.
I would just add one point that I think that I had a pre-critique of the retreat, and then a kind of an in the retreat critique, and then an after the retreat critique, and by critique I don't mean necessarily negative, but just kind of what how it was going to go. And the one thing I think that we could have done a little more crisper, perhaps. I think we could have spent a little bit more time on the priority setting. I think that was a big highlight and worked well. But what I think we weren't able to do well was sort of offer the realistic trade-offs between, here are the 5 or 6 priorities you might pick from. Here are the 5 or 6 things that might have to slow down, get more resources, get postponed, whatever. And I think that we sort of got there, but we didn't get there in as precise a way as would be extremely helpful to us. But I think we can sort that out. I mean, that's what we do well, and we will. I think we'll sort that out. But there will be times this year, and the budget will be certainly one of those times where we'll have an opportunity to kind of focus in and say, okay, we can do these priorities. A couple things are going to slip a little bit, or we're going to have to add some resources to bring a consultant in, or contract staff, or whatever. And I think we've got a couple more opportunities to do that where we get a little more precise connection point. And I don't know if you can do that in 2 days anyway. So, but I thought it was, I agree with David. I've been in 3 of these with Truckee, but I've been in many in my past experience, retreats and offsites and these kind of things. And I thought this one was one of the more provocative ones. And maybe just a little bit more precise preparation, I would think, for next year to kind of really try to set up exactly the questions we wanna be provocative about.
Yeah. You're chomping. Go ahead. Yeah.
And that we actually do like one-pagers.
We're not going to vote on that right now, though. David, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to offer a thought because, we do these retreats once a year. It's the one time we have to really talk in a more focused way and spend the time doing that, not necessarily in this same setting and forum. And Tony, when you came on board, we had a sort of a mini retreat, 4 hours, half a day. And I don't, I think that maybe we're something thinking about that we do a mid-year kind of mid-course check-in, a half day or whatever it is, just to fine tune or see where we're at, how we're doing against the priorities that we established. I don't think we necessarily have to wait a whole year every time. So just offering that thought.
Any other department head want to say anything? This is your chance. Come on. Seeing a lot of nodding heads.
I'll just chime in a little bit specific to development. So you're right, there's no moratorium direction from council. So our current land use applications are being processed as they've always been. I will say that with further prioritization of community engagement in the general plan update process, we're going to throw more staff at it. And we have more staff. You've allowed us to do that, which is a great benefit. It's still going to require some juggling, and so things will get slower. And within that, there has to be further prioritization. So I think that's a budget discussion that department heads are going to have in the near future, and then you'll see that when it comes out in front of you.
Thanks, Danielle.
And I suspect that there are going to be times when we may have to tell you, we can't do it. We can't do everything that you want. And so as Jeff alluded to, I suspect that there are going to be times where we say, we can do that thing that you've just told us to do, but we're going to have something else not happen or not happen this year, or move something else down the priority list. Because we just, there are so many good ideas in the community and on the dais that I think they may outstrip our ability to execute all of them.
And I'm going to echo a little bit of what Andy said, and maybe speaking on behalf of all of us, and you can all tell me I'm totally crazy or not, but I think we want that. I think that's potentially what we were missing for the past year. We want to be told, hey, you can't do everything. Here's what you can do. Here are the resources that we have, and here's what's realistically deliverable in a given time frame. And unless we have those expectations, unless we know what the expectations are, our expectations are the world, right?
Well, and particularly when we try to tie this back into creating raving fans, which Councilmember Tierman adequately pointed out that means we have to do things well. And so obviously we can't do everything and do it all well. So yes, we're going to keep asking, and you guys are going to have to help us understand what are the trade-offs? What are we impacting with these requests?
Yeah, and I think that's what we all, I think that's a collective thing that we can all really reflect on that we did take from that retreat. At least I know we did. And we want to empower you all to help us get there. Don't push back. That's what's needed in order to create raving fans, to be successful, to do everything that we want to do. We need to know the trade-offs, and the budget process is absolutely the next best place to do that. So without cutting you off, Dan or Kim or Judy, Nothing. You're good, Kim.
Well, you heard what Nikki told us this evening, that our revenue increases are slowing down, and I would say they're slowing down to a point where adding new things will require and taking something out. And last year was a spending year, and we spent a lot of money. This year we're living in.
We can always count on you for those conversations. You got to work with your colleagues there to But I mean, we really are in that position. So thank you for the permission to be emphatic about that. Yep.
And never misinterpret. I would just like to say that my desire to get feedback and get answers and have things come back to council is due to my enthusiasm for the capital improvement project, or the next single-use plastic resolution. And what else can we do with that $1.5 million? I can't wait to get that answer. So that's due to our enthusiasm, and you need to help us understand what pace that needs to come at in order to do the job well.
Anybody else before I close this? I'll finish if you want. So if you all have a few more comments,
I don't know my last, but
it doesn't have to be your last.
What David said. I mean, he kind of mentioned about the mini retreat, and since it was new for me, I kind of have just let it flow and happen. But I will say that what I got out of the bigger retreat was very, very impactful, and having something similar but smaller version midterm is, I think, a really good idea. I don't necessarily think the way we did it this first time was as effective as it could have been, but I think the idea is really, really good. So I don't want to let that one slip, because I think that's something that we should consider, because at the end of the day, we as a group do better for the town and for the town staff if we are in a better position, understanding each other, understands issues, and not being put in this position where we're always in little silos, and you have to kind of look through glass and try to sort of like do sign language and figure out where we're going and what we're doing. So I think it's a really important part of helping the town do better, and not that it's doing bad, but do better. And the other thing I wanted to say is I'm still stuck on the fact that Andy said I had good ideas. I don't know, but I feel pretty good about myself right now. Thanks, Andy.
I don't remember him saying that, did he? No,
well, he was kind of referring to the whole dais, but I knew he was talking about me.
Are you good? Yeah. You're good.
And to be clear, and tell me what I need to do, and kind of what David brought up as far as the ongoing things that are maybe getting stalled out, and I understand why. How it's an important part for me to figure out how to make sure we don't stall out where we should. We need to keep some of those things going along, and this may not the place to answer that, but someone can help me out, maybe, and maybe we and I can figure it out. I don't know. So
great. So I really wanted to just bring that sort of 360 degrees full circle, make sure everybody did have a chance to reflect on that, for the record, for the public, for, department heads as well, because I felt that it was, I think provocative is a really great word to use. I hadn't thought of that word, but it was, from that perspective, a very effective way for us all to be better decision makers and to learn how to be better leaders. And that was one of the lessons that I took out of it was, how to make decisions in an effective way. And I think that was just one of the great exercises. So, priority setting is hard. The budget session is our next chance. I would agree with you, Tony, that poster maybe isn't completely reflective of everything that's happening and what we decided to do. So my suggestion, and if everybody's okay with it, is we sort of leave it up and it's there and we can remind ourselves of it, but it's not necessarily our governing document for the year, but it is something to reflect upon as we move forward. We're not taking action at this point necessarily on that. So, I would say thank you to everybody who participated in that, and really appreciate everybody's time. So
just one comment on that, for Tony's benefit. When we did those priorities in 2019, we deliberately did not number them or order them. They were all equal. And I think part of the issue here is just the graphic itself.
Right.
The graphic itself gives the impression that the ones on the bottom are less important than the ones on the top. Right. And they were all equal.
It's really just a graphic design thing.
I agree, and I am very aware of that. Except that if we're having raving fans and we're communicating something, we want to communicate the right thing. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's just not sure it's right. So,
and that's easily fixable.
Have we done a diagram or a poster like that every year?
No. This was the first diagram version. So we also have a written version that's a little more traditional.
I get that.
Yeah. But no, we just decided to try something a little different and have a little fun with it.
Cool. So I think we're good on that agenda item. We're ready to move on. And so thank you. What's that? 6.8. I got it right here. I make big notes to myself now. So we're going to come back to item 6.8, which is the Truckee Donner Public Utility District Electric System Master Plan, which the recommended action was to authorize the mayor to submit a letter providing comments on the master plan. Tony, you pulled this item, so maybe why don't you start us off, and then we'll get some questions and see if there's any public comment.
So first of all, I realize that this is a letter going to the PUD, and it's a support and commentary and whatever. I think it's all great. Underground utilities, awesome. The one thing, and this maybe I've said this so many times today, is that it's more of a philosophical thing, and I'm struggling with putting on something coming from the town when we're supposed to be looking out for our citizens in every which way. Another way to add cost, and at 2%, though it's small, it's just another thing to add cost, and I'm trying to be sensitive to that. And again, I do like underground utilities. I just don't. That's the one piece in that whole thing that just kind of makes me go, ugh. Can we say everything and encourage, but not really look for ways to encourage higher costs?
Great. Thank you. Open it up for public comment. Seeing none. Closing public comment. Bringing it back for deliberation. Did you want to say anything, Dan, about just the scope or maybe the thought process?
Sure, just a couple of comments. And as staff, when we were crafting this draft letter, we went through the same thought process on, it's kind of a fine line in terms of communicating with a sister agency in the town and trying to hit the right tone of not trying to tell them how to do their business, but making some comments as in areas where their business overlaps with our business. So that was the tone we were trying to hit. As it related to the fee issue or the cost issue that Tony's bringing up, the reason we landed on putting this in is that in conversations that we've had multiple times with the PUD on different projects where we were trying to accomplish undergrounding, the consistent input we were getting from their staff was we don't have money built into our fee structure to fund utility undergrounding, and that's been the consistent pressure point between us and the PUD in making these what could be, I think, very kind of hand-in-glove partnerships come together quickly. It's every one of them's a struggle, and there's a lot of back and forth in terms of, is the town going to fund it all? Is the PUD going to fund any of it? And it always, at least the input we get from staff, comes back to, well, we don't have funding for undergrounding built into our fee into our financial model. So that was the reason that we were specific on that point, was to really raise the issue in an appropriate venue to the level of the PUD board, so that they could, think about this. It's never clear to me in terms of these conversations that we're having with the PUD staff, what amount of that information is floating up to the board for conversation at their level versus is staying at the staff level. So we were seeing this as a venue to, comment on this, point out some of the nuances of it and why it's important from our perspective, and then tie it back to ultimately it comes down to dollars and cents in these conversations that we have. So that's the reason it's there. Yep.
Thanks, Dan. Any comments?
Yeah, Dan, for example, on the Donner Pass Road, the undergrounding that took place last year, that was a collaborative effort, right? The town clearly participated in the cost. The other utility agencies did as well. Yes. And it was because of that collaboration and participation that was able to happen, that particular undergrounding.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm actually really supportive of this letter just as it's written. I think it's so important to highlight all the benefits of undergrounding utilities, and I know it comes at a cost, and I recognize the importance of trying to balance that. But for me, the benefits of this, as outlined in your letter, not just aesthetics, but safety, fire, vehicle collisions with poles, above ground infrastructure, reliability, maintenance, UV exposure, vandalism, storm drainage, pole replacement, tree trimming. I mean, there's just, it's prolific. And for our community in particular, there are so many additional benefits or co-benefits of undergrounding utilities. I think as we all realized when those poles finally came down on Donner Pass Road. So I'm supportive as is. I think it would be beneficial for the community, for TDPUD to be setting aside money towards this in the future, particularly as we start looking at things like West River Street improvement scapes.
Go ahead.
Okay, I will just.
Were you chopping? I didn't know.
Go for it.
Okay. And I as well support the letter. The letter is just offering an example of something the PUD can do. Ultimately, it's the PUD's decision to whether to charge or not to charge. But I think highlighting the issue, giving an example is a good thing. And for all the reasons, that you articulated that are in this letter, why undergrounding is a good thing. And I heard you, I think you support that as well, right? Yeah. So, but in any case, I support submitting a letter as written.
So what the part on that, I agree with everything about it, and except that we just got done talking about having a goal for $1.5 million for housing. We're talking about housing being a very big problem, and the cost of housing and the fact that people can't afford to live here, and how do we reduce the cost of housing. Those are the kind of conversations we're having. We just had a conversation about 25 cents fee, and is it good or not for business and how it will affect. And the point being is that we keep, this is, like I said, this is philosophical. I'm not saying that we can go to the letter, whatever, but when do we start saying there's more things that are important and those people are silent, they're quiet, they're just trying to go to work, pay their rent, pay their utility bills, go to the grocery store, buy groceries. And I just want to make sure that we have that. It has to be in mind. We have to pay attention to that, because those are very important people as well. As much as I would prefer to have no utility poles, for all the reasons that are mentioned. It's a great idea, but it's not always on someone else's back. It's not always the best idea, and that's my point. If it goes, the letter goes. I'm not going to oppose it. I just want to make sure that that philosophical part gets ingrained into what we as a town keep in mind when we're talking about these kind of things. That there is a consequence to somebody. It may not be me, but it's going to be somebody else. So, and sometimes it's good, but sometimes it's not.
Appreciate those comments. Vice Mayor Klostad, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the letter as written and authorize the town manager to sign it and send it. The mayor to sign it and send it. All you.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
And the motion carries. Great. I think now we're really out of order, but I believe we are council reports. Thank you, Judy. That's where I was going. Council reports. We'll start with Councilmember Tierman.
Yes, I have a few things to report. Since I was not at the January meeting, so going back to January 17th, attended the Mountain Housing Council quarterly meeting with Jeff right here in this room. On the 22nd, 23rd, the council retreat, of course, that we spoke about. On January 31, participated in kind of an all-hands-on-deck meeting regarding the old trestle project on West River Street, kind of one of the first, if not the first, sort of catalyst project for that part of town. So good meeting, good productive meeting. On the 5th of February, participated in a promotional film regarding the vision of a new library in Truckee. This is going to part of the Friends of the Library effort to get the word out and to educate the community about what a new library might ultimately mean and become for this town. And then this morning, started early at 7 a.m. with Good Morning Truckee, and our very own Tony Commendatore did a wonderful job introducing himself, and along with Deirdre Walsh from North Star, the new GM, and then the Forest Service gave some nice updates as well. And Jeff, you were there, so yeah, so that's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Commendatore.
I'm pretty sure we just had a meeting yesterday, the last town council meeting, because that's pretty much how fast the week, I think, or 2 weeks went by. I did do a presentation today, and at Good Morning Truckee. Good Morning America and Good Morning Truckee. It was televised nationally for those who didn't know. And it was good. It was great. I was glad to be there. I got to represent. Hopefully I did a good job. And thanks for all those who came out to watch me. Thanks.
Vice Mayor Klofstad.
Because they were watching you. They weren't there for Deirdre or anything else. Well, I would just like to give a quick shout out, even though they're gone now, but the biathletes that recently returned from the biathlon masters competition. It sounds anyway like they represented Truckee well, with some strong finishes by the men and multiple medals by the women. So it's pretty nice to have that large of a group go and represent our little town of Truckee. Since the last council meeting, we did have another GPAC climate subcommittee meeting where we worked through some of the ideas that had been added to the list for possible greenhouse gas emission reductions. And those in particular, the ones that were in ways in conflict with each other. So it was a robust and healthy discussion. I think we came out with some good direction from that. The same day, I enjoyed watching my first, or participating in the first officer swearing in ceremony with Chief Leftwich, and that was very interesting. Jake Donahue and was also recognized, as we talked about, and as Officer of the Year and Employee of the Year, Valerie Pelk. I was interviewed by Ben Baruch for his Eagle Scout badge, which was actually really interesting. He had some great questions for me and stumped me on a few. And I finally got to attend one of the all-employee quarterly lunches. That was my first, and I was really impressed, particularly with the sharing that happened during that process and the way that each of the departments were really there supporting each other and teaching each other different things. I thought that was great. I also enjoyed lunch with the previous mayor, Goodwin, mayor and vice mayor Goodwin, who said to say hello to everybody. He and his fiance were up visiting for the weekend, and that was really delightful. And then yesterday I was interviewed by the CAT Local Government Affairs Committee. That was very interesting discussion about the affordable housing tax, small business exemptions, natural gas, well, what they thought was elimination, but I think we cleared that up, and then, of course, greenhouse gas emissions. So.
You haven't been busy at all. What are you going to do when you're the mayor? You're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, it's...
This 2 weeks has definitely been a blur for me as well. I have spent a large amount of hours with the TBID group, both individually, internally, and externally, and I am potentially, I should never jinx it, but they hopefully are coming to us at the end of March. We're just knocking on wood here with some agreements and with some next steps. It's been just a really incredible roller coaster is how I can describe it at this point. And it's been great, though. They're working really, really hard to make sure that they're doing the right thing, I think. So I look forward to bringing that all to you so you can finally see the fruits of all of these labors after the past 6 months. I attended a meeting last week with the Nevada County, with Richard Anderson and the Nevada County CEO, with Cindy Gustafson and her staff, along with Jennifer Merchant, and then Jeff and Shauna and myself were there. And it was a great sort of mini convening around housing issues and how we can start to either share resources or work together or really figure out what each jurisdiction is working on and really the best path forward so that we're not duplicating processes across all of our incredibly close jurisdictions with many of the same issues. So I hope that some efficiencies will come out of that. I hope some good sharing will also come out of that. And it was a productive meeting that I think we are probably going to continue at least every quarter maybe or somehow keep that running. And then all of your inboxes have been inundated with the Donner Lake backcountry ski run parking situation. So I wanted to offer my condolences on that, but at least tell you that there has been a great meeting. We had a meeting of all of the minds, almost everybody at that table, along with the HOA Association, along with the Tahoe Backcountry Alliance and the Land Trust, and everybody got in the same room. Everybody got on the same page. And there, we'll see what happens more officially and regulatorily, I guess, as that moves forward. So just know that all of those emails are being seen. They are all being replied to, just so you all know. And if you do want any other information, you can reach out to Jeff and he'll fill you in so that we don't have a Brown Act violation. And other than that, I think we are good, right? Thank you all.